people like watching that. I don't know how the sausage is made. Hello, we are live.
Hello. Hey.
Thanks for everyone coming to our short noticed recording with the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, guys. Brandon and Gamby, super exciting. Thanks for joining us.
What's going on, guys?
Year 2 of this.
Year 2.
It feels like it was like 5 years ago that we did this.
Gosh. I know. It really feels like so much time has passed. That happens with anything I look back on now in the past.
Right.
I'm like, how much time has actually passed?
So let's just start recording because that's always an important step in this process.
I'm also recording local. I thought I was going to record everything, but this isn't. I don't know. Whatever. So it's just going to be my personal recording, which I think is what we're going to doing what the idea was anyway. So
yeah, like I'll definitely also record the Zoom
together.
call, so we'll have lots of recordings. But also, I think we should each do our own Audacity if possible. So
yeah.
So I'm going to start mine. I'll just count down. But I mean, I can figure it out later to sync it up. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, record.
You can also just leave Gamby muted. I mean, for the quality of the stream, it's
my takes don't matter.
Okay.
Elon, did you tweet? Are you tweeting?
No, I did not tweet, but I think at this point I'm good to not tweet because it's like they'll listen to the podcast.
Okay.
You could tweet if you want.
Surprise.
Maybe a surprise drop.
All right.
What fun surprise.
But there are some people in the chat room here.
Oh.
You guys want to watch what's happening in the chat room? I could send you the link, or maybe it's just
at least pop the chat out.
It's just keepingkarlsson.com/live
for when people inevitably flame my takes.
I mean, you're never the one that gets flamed. It's inevitably almost always me. Ever since my Bob take, I don't do so well in the public eye.
What was your when was this? Was this 1 year or 2 years ago?
This was last year.
We argued about this I think when we did this crossover, Bob was involved.
This sounds familiar.
So wait,
I said that Bishop was the second best goalie, and you said Bob was, and then we literally fist fought about it, and it was clearly Bishop.
It was there was a lot of problems there. So now everyone, anytime, that's like a running meme now that like, and now I like Bob again. I think he's a sleeper, and it's like, and of course everyone's just like, of course Gamby likes Bob again.
Well, at least now you're getting him a little bit later than you got him last year, so
it's just a bit.
All right, so
Gamby's still reaching third round Bob.
Third round. We've gotten him in 2 listener leagues so far. So far we have pretty high stock in Bobrovsky, which I like.
All right. I'm going to start the show.
Let's do it.
So this will be the Keeping Karlsson episode. And then,
Sounds good.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by 2 guys who did not name their podcast as well as our guests today for this bonus episode. I'm your host, Elon Dubrowski. We've got a really fun show planned. First, of course, let me introduce the fantasy hockey robot, my very best friend, Brian Com.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. So glad to be here for a bonus little this is preseason. We are in preseason. Yeah. We're a week away from the season. There are no games, but this is preseason. Training camp lines have started rolling in and have provided a lot to chew on. Some of it like total garbage and junk food, but it's been fun, and we'll bat some of it around tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We've got line combinations from every team, and we're just going to kind of go through every team, or actually only half of the teams, because then we're going to be switching over to another podcast feed where you're going to have to hear the second half of the teams, because joining us are Gamby and Brandon from the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. You already know them. We did this last year, so we're bringing them back. We're doing it again. We're going to cover the North Division and the West Division on this show, and then we're going to switch over and do the Central and the East over on Fantasy Hockey Podcast. But first, of course, let me introduce our guests, Brandon and Gamby. Hello.
Welcome, guys. Good to be here again.
Yeah, I guess probably if I was a better host, I would have been like Brandon, and then you would have talked. And then, but
well, here we are, preseason in January, right? Like the most normal year that we could have expected here.
It's
just weird. Everything is normal at this point. Like if there's a mess up, I expect it at this point.
Yeah, it was a normal day.
All the wacky lines we've been seeing, right?
Definitely. Some lines are so weird. It's like we have to, I guess part of, like, we should give the caveat right off the top that as we go through these teams, like, we're not saying that we actually think these are going to be the lines, even if these lines do last into like game 1, doesn't mean that it's going to last all season. So take any, I don't know, hot takes that we get from it with a grain of salt, but still interesting to see what the coach is thinking at this point in time as we go through it.
Stop making trades. Stop it.
Wait,
I've seen so many trades. I want to trade Charlie McAvoy. I dropped him for Grizzlick. It's like, just relax. I want to trade Giordano for Rasmus Anderson. Like, stop. Just
Yeah, actually, our cupful moves, like for our Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, open tonight, and like I don't know what to do. Like, I can overreact to everything, like just in case, or I can just like sit and wait, because I'm sure by the time we get to the start of the season, everything's going to loop back around, which is still what makes this a legitimate preseason, right? Like, normally at this time, we'd be just going cuckoo, or we wouldn't be, but some people might be going cuckoo for preseason performances. We'd be like, just hold on. Like, don't overreact. Don't get too excited. So now we get to do that, but just with words in tweets from scrimmages.
Brian,
Absolutely.
I think what you should do is you should spend $20 fab and add Joe Thornton to your team, because all of a sudden the Toronto Maple Leafs, Sheldon Keefe has come out with out of a rocket ship, just like blowing everything up. Like, I think one of the most common things we've known about the Leafs is, like, first of all, they're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. And second of all, Zach Hyman is going to be playing in the top 6 and taking up one of those spots. But like, no, they traded for Joe Thornton over the summer. We assumed to be a bottom 6 guy, but no, like the lines at practice as of yesterday, today's Wednesday, by the way, Wednesday, January 6th, because these are probably gonna go out of date really quickly. So Matthews, Marner, Thornton, that's the top line. Tavares, Nylander, and Jimmy Vesey. We were talking about, like, it'll probably be Mikheyev on one line and Hyman on the other, then maybe like Robertson. We're looking at Thornton and Jimmy Vesey as top 6ers on the Leafs. So this is crazy. And yeah, so I guess, David, like, are you rushing to grab Thornton and or Vesey in your fantasy leagues?
No, I mean, well, so Thornton's an interesting one. I thought Thornton was a weird top line decision, but then Elliot Friedman in 31 Thoughts, or 30 Thoughts, I forget exactly what the number is. I have completely
31.
blanked on it, but is it 31? It's 31. Okay, thank you, Brandon. Of course, Brandon knows because he knows everything.
It's the number of teams in the league, man.
You're right. I
know.
know.
So
Soon it'll
next
be
year-
32. So just get ready for that big
I'll get ready.
change.
Next year I'll say 31 or 32 and Brandon can correct me again. But anyways, so in 31 Thoughts, Friedman had said that apparently Leafs management actually sold that top line spot and playing with Matthews and Marner to Thornton as part of the pitch to get him on the team. So to me, it feels less like an experiment and more like something almost Sheldon Keefe's hand is forced to do. The BC one makes no sense to me, and that one I'm not moving on. The Thornton one to me feels not permanent, but a little bit more sticky than it seemed at first after I read that. I don't know.
I think his complete inability to be able to keep up is going to affect that line eventually. But
okay,
I mean,
to be fair though, we've said that in Edmonton. Who won? How many? Patrick Maroon when he was
Patrick
playing
Maroon,
with McDavid,
the slowest man on the planet.
Dude cannot skate, and somehow he kept that top line spot. So I don't know.
All he had to do was stand in front of the net and just like let people hit him with stuff, right? Like the dude is probably leads the league in butt goals.
Which is which should be a category in all fantasy leagues. But yeah,
Absolutely.
so you don't think you think Thornton's too old is what you're saying. I wish we had data on like average skating speed or like top speed that's on the ice. It's coming sometime in the next 45 years when the NHL figures out their biometric data. But so you're not buying like, even if Thornton does stick there, you're not buying.
Well, what I'll say is, first of all, the quote I heard is like Jaromir Jagr was effective at the age of 42 on the Panthers top line like a few years back. So why can't Thornton? But I guess my response will be, at least for I hope it works out for the Leafs, right? I live in Toronto. I want things to go well. Joe Thornton's such a cool guy. Like, I'd love to see this work out. But like, even if he stays on the top line all season, what's like the upside for fantasy? Are we looking at like Henrik Sedin in his last season? He was on the top line on Vancouver and he got some assists. But for most fantasy leagues, just a guy who gets you a few assists, like no shots on goal, he's probably not going to get you power play points. So even if he's on that line, I still don't really want him. Like, if he's going to get a pace for 40 assists and 5 goals, it's probably not worth it to have him on your fantasy team.
You'd imagine, like, best case scenario for him, he's below replacement level in every single category except for assists. So you might be able to find some way that works out in a points league. In a Cats league, it seems like doomsday to me.
Yeah, and I don't think he's getting on the power play either, right? Which would be the saving grace for somebody who does, like even Henrik Sedin late in his career still had that role. Thornton is going to be missing that, I think. I assume. I mean, I won't rule anything out. One thing that they do have in common, though, like a guy like Sedin and Thornton, is they do adapt their game as they've gotten older, right? They're setup men, and they just sort of know where to be and how to get there in the most efficient way, because they can't quite do it as aggressively or quickly as they once might have been able to. But honestly, Thornton's 5-on-5 numbers, all he's done over the last like 5 years is shoot less. Otherwise, everything has been like pretty consistent in terms of his production. But if he loses that power play role, which I mean, he's all but certain to, then yeah, just getting those assists and nothing else probably isn't going to be worth a whole lot of fantasy value.
Yeah, by the way, we have a bunch of teams to go through. So maybe we should start like implementing like a 3-minute rule per team. But the Leafs obviously deserve more.
That might be. Of course, the Leafs, everyone is really only listening to this episode. They heard North and they're like, Leafs, that's it. That's all I want to hear.
All right, so those people can turn off the podcast now. But the rest of us, we're going to move over to Calgary now. Also, players that I did not expect to be in the top 6. By the way, I'm using this website that I made, GameDayLineTweets.com, where you can go and just look at tweets. Obviously, there's lots of sources out there for lines. I just really like seeing the actual tweet, because then if it's wrong, you don't blame me. You blame the person who made the tweet. In this case, it's Pat Steinberg, who tweeted some Calgary Flames lines today. And so Elias Lindholm not up on the top line with Gaudreau and Monahan. He's centering the second line. And today was Josh Levo playing with Monahan and Gaudreau. And then Lindholm was with Tkachuk and Dominic Simone, who was acquired as a free agent. If you guys recall, he was on Pittsburgh last year, sometimes played with Crosby. Apparently Crosby said he likes playing with Dominic Simone. So maybe, I don't know, Lindholm and Tkachuk were like, all right, let's try it out. So anyway, that's the situation. I don't know where Backlund is.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to cut in, Elon, because Pat Steinberg tweeted 2 sets of lines. There was Group 1 and Group 2.
Oh, right.
So you've got in the other group, like where's Backlund, where's Mangiapane? They're in Group 2 with Sam Bennett and Dylan Dube and Derek Ryan and Milan Lucic. So like, I don't know exactly what you can grab when a team is running these 2 separate groups of players, although it is interesting to see them experimenting. Like they have all their pieces of their top line in that first group, Gaudreau, Monahan, and Lindholm, and yet they're on separate lines. And Elon, you shared with me that's one concern you have about drafting Lindholm this year, is that he is going to get bounced from that top line again. And it's going to stick too long for him to be interesting to you. Fantasy Hockey Podcast guys.
Wait, but Brian, you're putting words in my mouth. If Lindholm is centering Matthew Tkachuk, then that's not so concerning, because Matthew Tkachuk might even be better than Gaudreau and Monahan. But yeah, also I should just mention quickly these Group A's and Group B's. I think from what I've seen, it's like still like probably the lines. Like probably what we're looking at is like Tkachuk, Lindholm, Simone, Gaudreau, Monahan, Levo, Mangiapane, Backlund, and Derek Ryan, and then Lucic with Bennett and Dylan Dubé. So yeah, Gamby, I don't know if you want to start like anyone interesting like Dominic Simone, Josh Levo, both of them playing on some pretty exciting lines.
All it shows me, I think, is just how terrible the right wing depth is for Calgary. More than anything, is just they have no right wing depth. I think the most interesting one, there's 2 interesting ones to me, and I'll let Brandon take the second one because I know he wants to talk about him. The first one is a winger, or not a winger, I guess he was, is the move for Lindholm to center is a little concerning to me. Sure, he's with Tkachuk, but does moving from a wing to center affect him, from a point production standpoint? I don't know if it will, but it is something that I guess I'd watch, right? And even though he's with Tkachuk, I'm not sure I like that as much with him being a center versus a wing, especially with Gaudreau and Monahan. As far as like the actual wings themselves, personally, no one really excites me. Also because none of them are going to be on the top power play. So none of them come with power play upside. The Flames last year weren't that great at producing 5-on-5. So like, I'm not that excited about it. And then the second guy, obviously, that excites me the most is probably Rasmus Andersson at this point. And I'll let Brandon talk about him because Brandon loves Rasmus Andersson. And I know he has plenty of words about him.
Oh, you're going to give, okay.
I think
you can go.
We can start with Rasmus Andersson. I don't like him at all for this season.
Really?
I think maybe long-term. Yeah. I don't buy that he's getting top power play. Come on. I think the only reason he got top power play is because Giordano was skating with a different group. He just wasn't out with the people that were playing top power play.
I've been bamboozled.
Elon is biting his tongue so hard to say that Rasmus Andersson isn't going to start on the power play because Juuso Valimaki is. That's not where you're going with this, Brandon, is it?
It's not. I mean, I think that either one of Andersson or Valimaki is in line to take top power play. I don't know if it happens this season. I certainly don't think it happens game 1. A couple other things. We talked about the right wing depth. I don't understand why the move from Lindholm to center is something they even want to do. Just from a coach, I don't really see the upside in that. Like you saw such good chemistry with Backlund and Tkachuk on that second line didn't slow Tkachuk down at all. Backlund's a great two-way guy, and you still have Tkachuk upside on the power play. So why do you need to change this? And if so, like why make, like, this isn't even a fantasy play, but like putting Backlund on the third line seems like a waste to me. Like maybe you play Monahan on the right wing, give him a shot over there or something, but I don't really see why you'd disrupt a really effective second line for funsies or whatever's happening over here. But
I agree.
So I think I feel like what's going to happen is we see a pretty similar top six last season, and this is like an extended tryout for Simone and Levo and these guys to see if they can make something happen on that right wing. But they have the pieces. Why mess it up? Is my, even if they did have a weird year last season. I mean, the season before that, they were like completely opposite. They were all over the place, scoring like crazy, couldn't be stopped. And then they overcorrected and didn't score at all. And now, I don't know.
Right.
They still seem like they have the right pieces to me.
Now I still expect that to like balance out, and they'll find some equilibrium between that season 2 years ago and the season before. But I'm totally with you on why would you mess with that second line? Like I don't, like, Lindholm seemed to be best on the top line, and you have Tkachuk, Backlund, Mangiapane who can handle their own business, or Dylan Dubé if you want. I don't see much of a need. I like Simone and Levo are both guys who we haven't chased them, but we've definitely been into the possibility that they could be great third wheels on a line with two good players, Levo in Vancouver and Simone in Pittsburgh. Neither one really panned out, although Simone really did put up good, like he's the one I have more faith in. But I feel like you're right. Like what you guys are saying about them, just seeing what they've got with their right wing possibilities if they do want to break up the top line. Just to answer what Lindholm can do at center, he did play about 20 games last season with Tkachuk and Mangiapane. In those 20, I put it to about 23 games is as far as I was able to like narrow it down to. He had 10 even strength points. For comparison, the 29 games before that, also 10 even strength points. The Flames had an awful start to the season, but then the 16 games when he went back to the top line and played on the right side, he had another 10 even strength points, but only in 16 games. So his production is not as good from center as it is on right wing, and you can attribute that to playing with not Gaudreau and Monahan, or you can attribute it to his position. Yep. But I think it would be really hard, Elon, to make the argument that he's just as good in the middle just because Matt Tkachuk is with him.
Well, also, I would say that I'm not going to put too much stock into like these 220 game groups that you're bringing up. So like, I'd like to see a full season and see what he could do. But you're right. We have to move on. I know we could talk about the Flames forever. They were referencing, by the way, I didn't bring it up, that Derek Wills did tweet out some power play lines a couple days ago. Tkachuk, Lindholm, Monahan, Gaudreau, and Rasmus Anderson, quarterback in that top power play. But we've heard that we don't think it'll last. I think it might last. I think Giordano's been telegraphed that he's on his way out. Like I don't think they want him to power quarterback, but why speculate? One day we'll find out, and that day will be very soon. So let's go to the Edmonton Oilers now. And they, again, like these are shocking. I don't even know. I think the teams are just messing with us a little bit. Like this is from January 4th already is the most recent I could find. So maybe they already have changed their plans. But like last year, the main thing I remember is Draisaitl, Yamamoto, and RNH were amazing together when McDavid was out. And then I guess they got eliminated from the playoffs in that first round, and maybe that's enough for them to decide, no, we're going back to another exciting trio. I remember when McDavid and Ryan Nugent, well, whenever anyone's with McDavid, they're awesome. And I remember Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was super exciting when he was with McDavid. Going into this year, I think that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to have a breakout year because he's going to play all year with Draisaitl. And now I'm like a little bit like bamboozled, like, oh, he's not, but he's with McDavid. So I'm still as excited about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And so it's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, McDavid, and Zach Kassian, and then Tyler Ennis with Draisaitl and Yamamoto. So to me, the guys that jump out here are Kassian and Ennis sneaking into the top six. And I guess Yamamoto sticking with Draisaitl is always a good thing. I was a little worried that maybe Puljujarvi can bump someone, but I guess, well, I mean, this is like day one lines, but that's what we've got so far.
I did take a late round grab on. I did take a late round grab on Puljujarvi in at least one of our listener leagues so far.
Yeah, we did one.
But it's more of a hope, right? Like he's very short leash. I want to see something earlier. I'm not going to bother, but Kassian we've seen be effective on that top right wing. Good enough, especially for Cats leagues. Ennis, I think, has been underrated for a long time. So if he can stay on that second left wing, like I wouldn't be surprised to see him put up numbers, but I don't know if that would translate to fantasy relevant numbers or not. Yamamoto's fun. I think they should definitely be having him in the top power play unit instead of Chason, which they have lately. But again, I don't get to coach these teams. So, but I do think that Yamamoto's got to be the most exciting right winger, but he's also the most drafted. It's not like he's just hanging around out there. And then the next up for me would be taking a stab at Puljujarvi and then Kassian if you need him. But Ennis, I think, again, upside is there, but like I wouldn't draft him. I might put him on a watch list in case he goes off in the first few games, but I feel like the likelihood of him staying second line for longer than like a third of the season is pretty low, just because I think they're going to keep trying different players out to see who clicks the best with Draisaitl.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think Kassian last year kept his spot for the most part of the season, if I remember correctly. So I don't think we're going to really see Kassian be bumped off of that spot. I think they like having that Tom Wilson-ish type player on the top line. So that's why Kassian keeps that spot, it seems like. And I feel like the Ennis thing, have we not been here before? Have we not tried Ennis on the second line with Draisaitl before? I feel like I'm having deja vu, and we've tried this Ennis experiment with Draisaitl before, and then it always ends up just going back to McDavid, Draisaitl. Maybe I'm wrong, but so I don't know if that sticks. I think a pool party Draisaitl Yamamoto line would be quite a line. That'd be fun. That'd be exciting. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping we get that line just because I want to see it. I don't really think it's necessarily the best thing for the Oilers, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch. So I don't know. I think that there's something there to potentially, and I also feel like you could switch Yamamoto and Puljujarvi and it'd be the same thing. Like, I don't know which one they end up going with. I feel like by end of camp, it could be either one of those two that gets second line. So yeah, like I think, like Brandon said, I think if you're late in a draft, like Puljujarvi is a good gamble because I think he has maybe potentially two spots he can take on that second line. The question is if Draisaitl stays there. I think if RNH goes down there, it might not be as fun of a line anymore from a points perspective, but there's still upside there.
For sure. I think Puljujarvi is a great late round flyer. Brandon, I think you mentioned like Kassian, like they seem to like him there, or he seems to be better than the other options, but like that's it. He's better than the other options.
He's the butt goal guy, man. They just replaced they just replaced Pat Maroon.
I just like
Kassian, and he just punches people a little bit more often.
It's really charitable for you to suggest, like, I feel like the suggestion is that Kassian is there by design, like the Oilers like that, like this type of player but when they just have failed to get anyone better. I guess they have Dominic Cahoon and Devin Shore as like sort of replacement level wingers who might somehow be a little more offensive. But I do also think you're right. The Oilers have that mentality that they need Kassian out there to, keep everyone in line when McDavid.
Did they even sign Devin Shore? I thought they didn't give him a qualifying offer in the end.
He was listed as unfit to play at camp 2 days ago.
Maybe they did. I vaguely remember them not offering, but maybe they did.
Unfit to play out of sympathy because they didn't offer him a qualifying offer.
There's a lot of that going on right now. So many players unfit to play.
I know, it's weird.
But yeah. Well, okay, so maybe they're just, the players are still, reacting from New Year's and getting back into shape a little bit. But okay, so I think the Oilers, the big thing for me is it's a win for Ryan. Anytime that Nugent Hopkins doesn't have to be on a line without McDavid and Draisaitl, as long as Draisaitl and McDavid are split, Ryan Nugent Hopkins wins and he could have a career year.
And adding Kyle Turris, I think all but ensured that's going to happen. Like he can be the third line center. They don't need Ryan Nugent Hopkins, or they shouldn't need him to anchor that third line anymore. They see that it doesn't work. Like they just need to, the Oilers are going to roll two lines and survive better than if they had to roll three.
Definitely.
I guess the question then is, do they roll two lines and an effective third line with Turris and they move RNH down to his own line on the second?
Yeah, like my fear isn't RNH on
That's
the third
my
line.
fear.
Yeah, Brian's brought this up before. I think it's more, Brian, like the concern is McDavid, Draisaitl on line one, and then Nugent Hopkins is on the second line, but he doesn't have such great, then he still has Yamamoto at least this year. But anyways, so that's the Oilers right now. We didn't see any power play as far as I saw, but it's probably what we'd expect. I guess we'll find out if Yamamoto gets a shot there. So let's go to the Habs now, who, that's a team I was very curious to see their lines, because unlike other teams where I made assumptions that were wrong, this team I actually didn't really know, because they've got, Josh Anderson in the picture and Tyler Toffoli. And to take a look, and it looks like they did make sense to me. Like they kept Danault, Gallagher, Tatar. And again, when I say they did, like I'm talking about like today's lines, which could change tomorrow again. But a tweet from John Liu here. So Gallagher, Danault, Tatar, and then Suzuki centering Josh Anderson and Jonathan Drouin, and then Tyler Toffoli with Kotkaniemi and Armia, which you'd think like, oh, too bad for Toffoli on the third line. I guess it really depends on how good Kotkaniemi could be now in his third season, as now like not a teenager for the first time. So maybe he'll have a bump. So it looks like a nice deep situation for the Habs. But I think Yeah, my take here is like Josh Anderson playing with Nick Suzuki seems good. I don't know. And he's great in bangers leagues. So he's like someone that people might, have under the radar since he missed lots of last year. When he did play, he was terrible, but he's someone that could be great value late in your drafts. I take him ahead of Tyler Toffoli in a bangers league.
Oh, 100%. And I think we've seen in our listener leagues, at least which have bangos, we've seen Anderson actually go a lot earlier than I expected. Pretty much every time people are definitely awake to him. And I think the thing I like the most about Anderson, and the thing that makes me like, Tatar, even Kotkaniemi and Toffoli less, is just how evenly it feels the Habs run their lines, especially those top three lines. So I feel like their minutes are pretty limited across the board. And the same with the way they split the two power plays, right? Both pretty much 50-50. It hurts them. And I feel like it hurts them on the 5-on-5 lines as well, which is great for Anderson because it means he's virtually guaranteed pretty good minutes. And the same with Armia and same with Toffoli and all these guys. But I think the problem is just that ceiling is capped. That's kind of what I don't like about like the Tatar and even Gallagher to an extent is I feel like that ceiling is capped because their minutes are in many ways capped. Like I don't see the Habs necessarily deciding, okay, we're running the Tatar to no Gallagher line, for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 23 minutes a game, whatever the max normal is. So the ceiling to me is very capped. The floor is good, I think, on all of them. But when Brandon and I did the Habs preview, we kind of said that all of them are just really middle ground, super even in a way. Like a lot of them, they offer different maybe coverage from a Cats perspective, depending on who you look at, whether you're looking at Gallagher versus Toffoli with it, whether Suzuki or Tatar, right? Like they all offer different categories. But from like an actual value perspective, I feel like they're all kind of similar. Am I right in that, Brandon? You agree with that?
Yeah. I think we saw that a lot, and especially in our drafts that we've been doing, in that the only Montreal player that's not a defenseman that gets drafted even reasonably high is Gallagher. Everybody else is like in this group of like they're probably going to go in like the 15th ish, and they're all like probably just above replacement level. And it's not to any of their own faults they're not higher. It's just that's the system that Montreal plays. You're not going to, like you said, you're not going to be able to get a guy that plays 65% on the power play. It just doesn't exist. Yeah. And now you look at the power play lines they have, and I do believe these lines will be the ones they go with. I think that Weber, as he's getting older, he still has an amazing slap shot. Why not take advantage of it, right? They're going to stick him in the Ovi spot. He's going to slap pucks like a madman, which is going to be great for everybody. And but as a result, I think that kind of like it might devalue a guy like Gallagher, who they may not need on the top power play, which they are not playing him there right now, which I hate because I drafted him a couple of times. But I mean, it is what it is. I'm just hoping it's a gong show in the North regardless, and I can just make it up on even strength. But yeah, I think that what we're seeing in these lines with, by the way, the top power play right now, last time they ran it was Suzuki, Toffoli, Weber, Drouin, and Petrie. I feel like Drouin might be the one that kind of swaps in and out there with maybe a Tatar. And then the second unit is Josh Anderson, Tatar, Gallagher, Kotkaniemi, and Romanov.
That was tweeted.
They both seem pretty good to me.
In French.
What did I say? What did I say wrong?
You're supposed to say it in French. The tweet is in French.
Oh well, I looked at the English one because I am English or American or not French.
I mean, I'm as curious as I am to hear your French accent.
Oh gosh,
you're not curious.
Okay.
It's bad.
So yeah, it's really funny that it took till the end of that conversation to bring up Jonathan Drouin's name, just by virtue of him being on the top line. Like it wasn't the top power play unit. It wasn't so long ago that he was considered to be the most valuable forward to pick off the Canadians. He had that season where he paced for 60 points in 82 games. That was his last year in Tampa. Then he went to Montreal, 49-point pace, 54-point pace. And last year in very limited time, 46-point pace. And I'm not about to say like we should be thinking about Jonathan Drouin. No, I think we've pretty much seen who he is. And like he relies heavily on power play production too. Like over the last over the 2 seasons before this one, he had 38 power play points out of my quick math here, 99 total points. So like just a huge portion of his production comes on the power play. So if he does stick on that top power play unit and in a deep enough league, maybe those power play points are helpful. But I'm with you. Like it seems very strange unless the Habs are going to run 50-50 units for Gallagher to not be on that top unit if they are loading it up.
Yeah, it seems to me like they're going 50-50. Like Tatar was their leading scorer last year, and Gallagher is Gallagher. So, and they're both like on this like quote unquote second unit. It's kind of maybe exciting for Romanov, by the way. So the second power play, like I said, like so maybe he gets a spot. If Petrie and Weber are on one, Romanov goes on the other. Like you said, though, also like the whole upside of everyone is kind of capped if they're all getting 50% power play time and also running their even strength lines. So
I want to touch on Drouin one more time and be like, just to put in perspective of how I personally feel about Drouin. Of all the players, and we just said how they're all kind of like just above replacement level, they're all essentially versions of each other in a way. I would take 6 Habs forwards above Drouin.
Oh, wow. It's funny in the
Tatar, Deneau, Gallagher, Suzuki, Anderson, Toffoli.
Yeah, easy. Yeah. And I take Petrie and Weber ahead of him too.
Well, definitely, yeah.
And Romanov.
I would even consider Armia in certain streaming positions above Drouin.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember last season, like what were the Habs, right? All season, it was like, okay, this week I own Deneau. This week I own Tatar. This week it's the rush to own Suzuki. Oh, this week, like I'm rushing to own whoever else. Like it was just like this constant flux of like whoever's hot that you own. And then when they cooled off, they just weren't worth owning at all anymore. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen again this season.
Yeah, like the thing with Drouin is he's had some really hot runs and then he's gotten injured. And so it's tempting to think like, what if he just got a full healthy season? That's what Jeremy is saying here in the chat. He thinks we haven't seen the best of him because he's been injured a lot, sadly. But anyway, I definitely am not drafting him. I'll keep him on my watch list, I guess.
Even when he played the year prior, he played 81 games. He was on a 54-point pace, played 60% of the power play and still like just, so I mean, and he played 17 minutes a game. I don't think he's going to get much more than that this season.
Yeah, definitely not recommending to reach for Drouin.
No, definitely not.
So speaking of the opposite of teams where they have a whole bunch of players you may want to consider in fantasy, let's go to the Ottawa Senators now.
Oh boy.
Who maybe one day will have some players, but right now their lines from today. So this is another Group A, Group B situation. So I'm just going to like pick out the interesting lines here. So I see Logan Brown with Dadonov and Tkachuk. So that's obviously, if that sticks, whoever centers, if Dadonov and Tkachuk, what do you think is cooler? If I say Dadonov, like I'm trying to be like Russian, or should I just say Dadonov and like say
Dadonov?
Don't get fancy.
We call him Daddy sometimes, so it's got to be Dadonov.
No, we don't.
Okay, so obviously, if Dadonov and Tkachuk play together, that means their center has value, right? Because I think Tkachuk is primed for like a big breakout season. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Tkachuk is looking like someone who's going to break out after like last year already being great and having this low shooting percentage and all of that. So Logan Brown definitely jumps out at me, but I think also the Sens are going to try out a few centers, so I wouldn't read too much into their lines. Like actually, if I go to the day before, there was Tierney with Tkachuk and Brown. So yeah, they've already been shifting it around. Wait, actually, that was a tweet from March I just looked at, so ignore that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, is there any other interesting line, or should we just talk about who's going to center Tkachuk and Dadonov, and that's kind of it?
I think that's kind of it. This team is kind of sad aside from that top line, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there's any number of people that could center that top line, and like even with Tkachuk having value, I don't know that I believe that his center will necessarily. Like they're going to have to be able to do something on their own, otherwise we're running into a Thornton situation, right, where they might get some assists and nothing else. Logan Brown, if he sticks top center, I hope we can see something good out of him this season. He's probably the most hyped IB for anybody to get that top center position. Otherwise, Colin White could get it. There's any number of players they have over there, but beyond that, there's really not much to be excited about. I do think Chabot's being slept on a bit, and I think that Connor Brown is going to be a good streaming situation like he was last season. Not somebody you hold long term, but in a week where the Senators have a good schedule and Connor Brown decides he wants to shoot a lot, then sweet.
Yeah, I agree.
I assume he gets top power play because who else does? So.
Yeah, one name that's not in these practice lines yet, because I don't think he's quite arrived yet, but Derek Stepan, the recent signing, who could.
That's so funny, Brian.
No, I'm not. No, we're talking about who is going to center.
No. It's just I really thought you were going to mention another name. Like you were like one player who's not here. And
I wasn't going to say Galchenyuk.
No, I was thinking like obviously Brian's talking. He's about to say one person who's not here that we should be excited about is, and then when you said Derek Stepan, I was like, wait, like what spit take? Because I was thinking obviously Tim Stützle.
Oh, Tim Stützle is also not there, but I was just talking in terms of centerman, and Josh Norris also. Like I feel like there's between Colin White, Josh Norris, Logan Brown, and Derek Stepan. It feels like one of them could just maybe gel, not enough to be themselves fantasy relevant, but to be enough for Tkachuk and Dadonov to like have a reasonable center to play with. So there's that piece. And then Stützle looks so freaking good in the World Juniors and is coming and seems ready to be an NHLer all of a sudden. Yeah. So we'll see if that does hold true once he starts practicing and playing with Ottawa. He was way off my draft lists before the World Juniors, and like I should never react to the World Juniors, but pretty good like last round pick if you're in a deep enough league right now just to see what he'll do.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when Brady Tkachuk had his first season and we were all thinking, what are the Sens doing? They're not even sending him to the minors. They're just want to like, get fans in the stands or whatever. But then Tkachuk was actually fantasy relevant. He was good in his first season. So I guess they're going to try to, get it to happen again with Tim Stützle, who's a higher pick, right? Brady Tkachuk was 4th overall. Stützle's 3rd.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, I think that also the thing with that Logan Brown, the reason I'm not putting too much stock into it is kind of, I think what Brian alluded to is like, let's say Logan Brown hits a little bit of a misstep. I don't see why they can't just replace him with Stepan. Or replace him with Norris. Like, I think they're just going to put whoever's working there in between Tkachuk and Dadonov to improve them. And I think all of them are kind of equal at the end of the day between like Logan Brown and even Galchenyuk or Stepan or whoever. I mean, they're all honestly not. Logan Brown makes the most sense, I think, but I also don't think it's just like a sure lock where he stays there the whole season.
Yeah, so it's the kind of guy you take with your last pick in your draft, assuming I'm going to hold him while he's there, and I'm expecting the leash to be like very short, and as soon as he's off that line, I swap to the next first line. Maybe you just keep on cycling in Ottawa centers of the top.
They'll always switch them in.
They'll always be available in free agency in your fantasy league. That's for sure.
I do like Chabot for what it's worth. I think Chabot is definitely being slept on a little bit. I think he had a pretty good season, all things considered, last year. I don't think it was to the level that people expected of him. I think that's kind of the issue. It reminds me a little bit of DeBrincat, where like people had these crazy expectations of them, but when you looked at it, you were like, well, they kind of over exceeded expectations the year before. Just cool off a little bit, and I feel like Chabot, he just kind of had a good season for all things considered, and now everyone's like, oh, he sucks. That's it. But I still like him a lot, and I think there's a little bit of upside there if things click, especially with Dadonov coming in.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then maybe, Matt Murray's been falling in all the drafts I've been doing, but who knows? Maybe the Sens could be not the most terrible, but who am I kidding? Okay, but let's go on. Terrible. I'll just drop that in, let you guys all grimace, and then move on to the next team. Let's go to the Canucks. Okay, finally some normalcy, right? This is what I was expecting to see. We got Besser, Pettersson, and JT Miller have been skating on the top line. Then you have Horvat with Tanner Pearson. They were great last year. A lot of last year, they spent time with Louis Eriksson. He hasn't been there in practice. It's been actually Nils Hoglander. So that's kind of an interesting name. If he sticks to play with Horvat, he won't get top power play, so it's not going to be like a huge hit, but in a super deep league, that's the guy that I'm kind of looking at like, oh, that's pretty nice for him. In a league where Tanner Pearson gets drafted and then you're still looking for more people afterwards. But yeah, I don't even have that much to say here. This looks like probably same as last year. I know Nate Schmidt has been on a defensive pairing with Edler, which is, nice for the Canucks, but I don't know if it does much for fantasy.
Yeah. Schmidt has actually... Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I do like what Hoglander might do for Horvat. I think if anything, that's one thing. It's better than Eriksson, right? Or whoever else they had last year. So I do like the idea that potentially maybe Hoglander can just make that line better. And if someone were to benefit, I could see Horvat benefiting from that. So I don't put a ton of stock into it. I'm not changing Horvat's draft position really because of it, but just something I'm certainly thinking about and paying attention to is that introduction of Hoglander is kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I feel like we're kind of circling, or at least I'm circling us back to power play usage quite a bit. And in fantasy leagues, it's a rare player that you want that's not on power play one, right? Mm-hmm. It's like very few. In Cats leagues, okay, it opens the door a bit, but in points leagues especially, like, who are you getting on the Nucks that's not going to be power play one? Probably nobody. You're going to get JT Miller, Besser, Pettersson, Horvat, Hughes, and then you're out. Like anybody else you might stream, or they're an injury replacement or something. For whatever reason, I feel like Nate Schmidt is like one of the most overrated fantasy assets. Every single year, I have to like fend off people telling me that Nate Schmidt is going to be like the best defenseman on their team, whatever team he's on. Like I had a lot of like Shea Theodore versus Nate Schmidt stuff last season. I was like, what are we talking about here?
What are we doing here?
But I think like, yeah, he can put up decent points, even strength, but he's not going to get realistic power play usage. So take a deep breath if you're thinking about drafting Nate Schmidt for anything besides like blocks.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, that was sort of the message. Like that's been the story of his career, like 35, 40 points. Maybe he'll get you some peripherals. He always seems like a guy who could, given the role, step up. Like it was the same thing back at the start of his career in Washington, right? Where he's quick, he's good with the puck, great utility guy, probably has some offensive flair in him, but that's not what anybody asks him to do. He's like the Paul Stastny of defensemen. Like looking at the Vancouver lines for me, the name that stands out to me, which maybe shouldn't at all, is Brock Besser. I'm just wondering what our confidence level is that he is on that top line for good after last year's
ADP. That's my confidence level, right? Like his ADP is like in the mid 50s. Like people are drafting him like he's already done what we're hoping his ceiling might be. It's like, what's happening? Again, like I just, I don't know, man. I like Besser, not anywhere near like the 4th or 5th round that people are drafting him in.
There was a time where like his height carried him there, but yeah.
I mean, his rookie year, like there's a lot of upside after that. And then, I mean, when you saw Toffoli come over last season and just like do so well, it's kind of like, why?
Well, to be fair, the thing is, it might just be excitement about Elias Pettersson, right? Like I feel like Pettersson's just getting better and better, and like also I feel like Quinn Hughes doesn't get better and better, and so like someone else gets points when those two people are getting points, and Besser's going to be there at even strength and on the power play, so that's the reason to be into Besser. But yeah, it would be nice to actually see him put together a full, good, healthy, not getting bumped to the third line season. Maybe
it would be nice. Like Besser is like the only player on the entire Canucks lineup that shoots the puck, literally the only one. Like everybody else,
Horvat shoots.
No. Last season, nobody on the team got more than 3 shots a game. Nobody, except for Besser.
What?
Horvat did not do it. He didn't. I looked this up. He didn't do it.
I believe you. JT Miller shot more than usual, but still like barely over 2 shots a game.
Yeah,
I was like, he's been shooting more.
It's a strange team.
Yeah,
they didn't need to shoot or score because they had Thatcher Demko. They had Thatcher Demko that stopped 50 shots every game. At least that's how the playoffs went, right? They didn't need to shoot. They just had to rely on their goalie to bail them out. Okay. Oh, it would be fun, by the way, to talk about the goalies, but we can't. We got to move on. Let's go to the Winnipeg Jets, the last team in the North Division, who have shaken things up a little bit. I like this. I mean, I don't know if I like this in terms of for the Jets, but I just like something different, right? Because last year, well, there were injuries, right? But when everyone was healthy, generally, we've been seeing Laine and Ehlers on the second line with whoever they get to center that line. This year, they actually have a decent second line center in Paul Stastny, but Ehlers is not there. It's Laine and Kyle Connor with Stastny, and then Ehlers up with Scheifele and Wheeler. So I'm not sure if that's like makes a difference in terms of like fantasy value, just because if Ehlers is still off the top power play, I think he probably maxes out as like a 65-point guy. I don't know if playing with Scheifele and Wheeler is going to like make it like just like Brandon was saying, right? If he's not on the top power play, you can't expect a point per game. That's like super rare. And Kyle Connor, I don't know, is this bad for him? Probably not. He's still on the top power play and he's playing with Patrick Laine and Stastny. So to me, it's just like fun to see something different. But at the end of the day, I feel like everyone's probably the same as last year. What do you guys think?
Brandon, I can go first on this one. I have a lot of thoughts about.
I think you go first. You have a lot of thoughts
Connor
here.
And all these guys
and Laine. Brandon has a lot of thoughts on the Jets this year.
I think the Stastny signing was like a no-brainer for them. I mean, we've saw the time when Laine went berserk and everybody drafted him in the first round the next season was when he had Stastny centering him. So bringing him back and having trying to rekindle that chemistry they already had makes a lot of sense. Ehlers, as far as players that don't play on the top power play, Ehlers is like the top of my list of guys I would draft that don't play on the top power play. There's so many things that could change to make him close to a point per game player or even a point per game player, honestly. Like if any of this, if in some alternate universe, they actually do trade Laine before the season starts, Ehlers' value goes like not just a little bit up, but like way, way up. Like you're talking about a guy that you could take right now in the 12th round-ish being worth 4th or 5th round value probably. If you can add power play point totals to his normal even strength game, shoots a lot as well. He's no slouch there. So I like Ehlers a lot. I think his ADP is kind of silly in Yahoo right now, even with not being on the top power play. You know, once you get down to those double-digit rounds, you're gambling anyway. And he's got a good enough floor that it's worth it. Connor, I kind of don't know why they moved him off the top line. Like maybe it's fine, but like why? Like he was doing so well with Scheifele and Wheeler. I don't see why you need to break that chemistry up. Keep Ehlers with Stastny and Laine. you've got it. You've got a system, I think. But
Well, maybe
I
they
don't
want
think
that.
it'll make much difference either way. Honestly, I think Connor's still good.
Maybe they just want that Kyle Connor energy down on the Stastny line. I think that's all it is. Just bring some of that luck down the second line.
They have so many shooters. So it's the opposite of the
Gosh.
Canucks. It's like Ehlers, Connor, and Laine all just want to blast all day long.
And Wheeler.
And then Scheifele just like can actually hit corners instead of just wail it at the net constantly.
Yeah, first center, Scheifele actually shoots a lot too. Like he's got, about 2.5 shots per game, and he's like deadly accurate. His career shooting percentage is 18%.
It's insane.
Yeah,
he might be the best shooter in like the entire league.
Yeah. And usually when you see that in the center, like I'm thinking of someone like I don't know, I think Kuznetsov probably fit this bill at some point, and maybe Backstrom, but like centers with near 20% shooting percentages are guys who take like 1.5 shots per game. So it's crazy that Scheifele is able to do this while taking more shots than that. By the way, Ehlers in the Cupful drafts, which is our listener league, went 77th overall on average, and we have 14 teams in a round, so that would put him somewhere around like the 6th or 7th round.
A lot higher than his Yahoo ADP anyway. But
well,
your Cupfuls were on Fan Tracks where you did the draft, right? I think the ADP was quite different there for whatever that's worth. But or how much people even
probably
use that, or just comparing on points. But
it also depends. Like it depends who's drafting in terms of like, first of all, where you draft, because there's those defaults really affect people, as we remember Martin Marincin a couple of years ago. And then also like I would say that probably the listeners of our podcast probably are not just using the defaults, and probably are more likely the types of people who have Dom Lucian's spreadsheet or something like that are helping the Dauber guide, whatever. All right, so there we go. We're done with the North Division. One down.
Hell looks good. I like him.
Hellebuck's good.
Hellebuck's good.
Yeah, he got some hardware last year to prove it.
He plays hockey well.
He's pretty good. I don't know about that defense in front of him, but he seems pretty good. So we've got 3 divisions to go. We're going to do one more on this show. Then we're going to hop over to Fantasy Hockey Podcast. But first, let's go to the West, the division. So back when we had Dom Lucian on the show, we did the North. He said that the North he thinks is going to have a ton of goals, and he thinks the West is going to be a place where there's not going to be many goals. You maybe want to fade some of the players that you would normally draft there. Let's start on a team that already wasn't a team we were going to expect to score many goals, which is the Anaheim Ducks. And now they get to also play in this West division. So the question is, like, do you want anyone from this team? So the top line in practice back on January 3rd is what the Ducks suck for tweeting lines. Actually, Eric Stevens is generally good, but he hasn't done much lately. But anyways, okay. So Raquel, Henrique, Silverberg, line 1, I guess. Getzlaf, Heinen, Jones, Comtois, Steele, and Terry, which is like a fun line of their 3 like up and coming prospects, not including Zegras, who might come. He had an amazing tournament. But anyway, no one here excites me at all. Like, I guess I always like to think that Raquel could bounce back, but I've been saying that for a few years now.
Ricky Rax, my boy. Yeah, he just keeps burning me every season.
Yeah.
But
we just
recently talked about the Ducks.
And talking about the Ducks.
Our feedback was this may be the only team in the league that I would draft nobody. Except for Gibson, maybe.
I was just going to say, yeah.
But like no skaters. Like, who do you draft? Raquel and Getzlaf. I guess Getzlaf, if you're in a PIM league, has some upside. Raquel has some upside because he shoots and hits. But like, you are scraping the bottom of the barrel because even power play 1 makes no difference on this team.
And you hear the off night argument. I don't even know if it's worth it this year.
Their off nights aren't that great this year compared. Just take Vancouver
actually,
players. They have great
Vegas
off nights,
is the team,
and they play the most teams while rested that are tired in a league or in a division that's going to have a lot of hopefully wide open nets.
That's good.
Vancouver players are good schedule wise.
I mean, I will say the off nights, like I was just doing a slow draft, and I grabbed Getzlaf late in the draft, and it was mainly because I was looking at like Getzlaf versus like I don't know if it was like maybe like a Brock Nelson around that area. Maybe you'll say I was dumb, but I looked at like Brock. I used the roster maximizer where you see like how many extra games you'd get from an extra player that's a bench player, and it was like Getzlaf would give me like 30 extra games, and Nelson would give me like 17. So it was like, okay, for double the games, I'll take Getzlaf, even though I think Nelson will get more points. So I like the off days, but you have to like work out to make sure they actually work out in your favor, and only for like maybe Getzlaf and Raquel.
The most interesting thing about the Ducks apparently is that someone in the chat said, Comtois, apparently the M is silent. So I don't even know how to pronounce it now. Cotois? That's interesting. Anyways,
Just
that's
say
all
it
I have
really
on the Ducks.
quickly. That's your Ducks analysis.
Okay. There you go. That's my
we're south of
that's
the
my
border.
Ducks
We
analysis.
can say it. We pronounce all M's here.
We've also talked about this on our podcast. I speak Spanish, so like all my other accents are just thrown out the window. I have an excuse, okay?
So who plays center between Raquel and Silverberg? It's Adam
Henrique.
Adam Henrique. Probably Henrique.
I was waiting for the like a Spanish accent.
Oh,
Enrique.
There we go.
Adam and Enrique.
Enrique. There you go. That's the one.
Yeah, that's like the only complete line too out of these depth charts. Like every other line has like 1, maybe 0, 1, or like 1.5 pieces. So yeah, that makes it really hard to find
Funny thing
value.
is, the one thing they did in the season that improved the team, decreased the value of the only good player to draft, and that's signing Ryan Miller as a competent backup to John Gibson, which might take away a few starts. It's like, well, can we get anything to win on this team?
You could say the same thing about they signed Shattenkirk to now challenge Fowler for the power play. So now Fowler's whatever small value he may have had as a top power play guy goes.
Right.
All right, so
honestly, that's just permission for us to totally ignore Fowler when like it would have been just like, oh, should I with my as my sixth defenseman?
Nope, now I don't have to
go.
No.
Oh, one little addition. Delorier had like more than twice the amount of fights of any other player in the entire league last season.
Yeah,
it'll be crazy if he keeps getting minutes. Like I don't know how this guy. I don't like know. There are better players than Nicolas Delorier.
I will say, if you're in a Pimps league, though,
a lot of hits.
This is probably the division to watch for fights. I would guess.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of bad blood between like Vegas and Anaheim, Vegas and the Kings, Vegas and the Sharks. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of bad blood in here. Also, because a lot of them suck.
So playing against Ryan Reeves 8 times. I mean, he's going to punch everybody in the team once and once. You know?
I would have thought like with a compressed schedule, everyone will maybe be a little gentler because they all know that they've got a long journey ahead. But I guess
don't know. It's like a playoff series every single night with the amount of
that's
time
like the marketing.
I think the tension is just going to be ratcheted up.
All right, so I guess we've spent a lot more time on Anaheim than I expected we would, but totally worth it to say that there's no one fantasy relevant potentially. Yes. I will say if Zegras comes, then all of a sudden if you have like Zegras, Getzlaf, and like Steele or Terry, like that could become an exciting line to go along with. So they might have 2 lines, but yeah, still not that exciting. Definitely very different than some of these other teams we've talked about. But let's go to a team with maybe a bit more upside. Just kidding. Let's go to Arizona, who probably has maybe even fewer exciting players in fantasy. I guess we can make the analogy of like Clayton Keller is to Ricard Raquel, someone that we thought was really good and then for the last couple of years has disappointed us. And now Clayton Keller gets to play, according to the most recent practice lines I have from Craig Morgan, Keller with Nick Schmaltz and Connor Garland. Oof. And so Kessel was away, and actually Brassard was away, and Barrett Hayton was away. So probably these lines don't even really matter that much. But even with like Hayton, Brassard, and Kessel, it doesn't make me that much more excited about Clayton Keller. Like, okay, if you were playing in a fantasy league where you just take the team and you just get all the players on their team, and it's just points, do you go Arizona or do you go Anaheim?
Anaheim.
Okay, so I think that's all we need to say about.
Although, if I could pick, just one,
please.
I want to believe in Connor Garland. I do. I don't know that he'll ever reward me for it because they're going to give him 13 minutes a game, but he's the guy. Kind of. I don't know. I mean, he shoots at least.
If I had to pick one guy in Arizona, it'd probably be Schmaltz.
Wait, not Keller?
No. I don't know. I think Schmaltz showed himself better than Keller last year. I know. I do too. I hate his like unsustainableness
I have
last
like PTSD
year.
from all the questions I got about Nick Schmaltz last season when he was like going on that weird run of like 30% shooting. And
nothing made
sense.
Like
the best player on the world. Drove
me nuts.
I was like, it's gonna clearly it's gonna come
Kessel.
down.
Okay, so here's the thing about the whole Arizona team to me that like I don't like. We've talked about this.
Draws. He's like a 35% draw guy.
That is true. He sucks at draws. Anyway. He does suck at draws. But the thing to me about Arizona is just that the system in general sucks. They made Taylor Hall suck. That takes effort. Like, you've got to try to make Taylor Hall suck. And to me, it kind of reminds me of Dallas, where like Dallas plays this defensive system that really just kills offense in many ways. And you just go there to die. And I feel like unless you're Nick Schmaltz, who shoots at 30% for a few games, everyone goes to die.
I think playing in Arizona, literally, like if you play there for a certain number of years, you will turn black and white physically. It just reduces the color from your being.
So we're happy that Taylor Hall isn't there anymore.
Oh,
is what I'm hearing. Yeah, I mean, like he wasn't I mean, he was awful. Like, I was going to try and sugarcoat a little and say, like, 65-point pace. But for Taylor Hall, anything below 70-point pace is a disappointment. And I'm trying to, like, look into the numbers and see why and exactly what went wrong. Arizona just doesn't score a lot of goals. Like, it says something that he was more successful in New Jersey than he was in Arizona. And I like the point that you guys are making, that we can't expect anyone to not fall victim to that same fate, so long as, they play a certain system with Rick Tocchet, given, like, where we've heard the argument that Rick Tocchet essentially uses the tools he has, like playing the shutdown defensive style, or trying to, isn't his choice. Like, it's not his preference. It's just all he has the option to. And this season again, essentially he's in the same place. So we'll see. Like, Clayton Keller is someone who, like, I'm still just like, can he? But then I see that he's on practice lines. I mean, again, practice lines, preseason, whatever. But with Schmaltz and Garland, and I look at the rest of the depth chart, and I'm like, who else could he play with? And it's like not any better than Schmaltz and Garland.
Well,
really.
no, I mean, maybe what's the best case scenario? Maybe like
Hayton
and Kessel. I don't know.
But like, that's still not that's not a world better.
Yeah.
To me, the issue is
Keller,
like
Dvorak, Garland. I feel like could make something happen. Maybe. I don't know,
but
maybe not. Who knows?
Here's the issue for me though. Is like, it doesn't matter what they do, right? Like, we're talking about the system. If you look at Keller, who's been on Arizona now 2 years, right? We have these numbers. His on-ice shooting percentage for Keller has been about 8.5% now, 2 years in a row. Right? That's just not very good. And then you look at Phil Kessel, whose on-ice shooting percentage before Arizona was at 11%. It went down to 8 when he went to Arizona. Then you look at Taylor Hall, whose shooting percentage went from 11.2% down to 9.6 on Arizona. So like, everyone's on-ice shooting percentage just collapses. Like, no one scores on that team. So aside from, like, I feel people just not scoring, maybe they just don't get into good scoring positions. I'm not 100% sure what it is. There's just not as many goals to be had. So your assists also get kind of brought down. So points in general just aren't there. It feels like it's just a tough situation. I don't like really, I'm trying to stay away from Arizona. They remind me of Dallas, in which, like, if you're going there for points, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
I'll just like push back on it a little, like saying, like, in Arizona, it was, I mean, this is just compared to New Jersey, essentially, from the first half of the season. But like, Hall saw more offense while he was on the ice in Arizona than he did for the first half of New Jersey. And like, it wasn't so different from the rest of his New Jersey days either. I'm actually looking at his on ice. I'm like, do I have this right? His on ice expected goals rates were the highest of his career in Arizona. Somehow.
Isn't that the thing though, in Arizona? Like, all of them have great underlying numbers. Like, they're playing good hockey, but just nothing goes in. I feel like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm
puck.
I feel like
it's the home stadium's messed up. That's what's happening.
It's like why more home runs are hit in Colorado ballparks. There's the air is thinner. The air must be thicker in Arizona.
Yes,
just
that's
stops
exactly
pucks
what
on
it is.
its own.
It's all the sand that comes in from the doors. It goes onto the ice and slows everyone down.
Everybody's just been boozing in the universities before they come to the game. Everybody's literally slower.
So speaking of that hot air in Colorado, or the cold air, I don't know. Okay, let's go to Colorado now. Let's get to a more exciting team. And yeah, a little bit different. So they haven't been running McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog. They've instead brought Landeskog to the second line, which is great news for Andrei Burakovsky, who's gotten a shot for the first couple of practices over with McKinnon and Rantanen. I think right away that like jolts Burakovsky way up my draft list, because like, looking at last year's numbers, they were great. But then the question was, okay, but yeah, once everyone's healthy, then he'll probably just be on the second line at best and not on the top power play. But if he is on the top line, like, definitely if we're getting to the late rounds of a draft and Burakovsky's still out there, this is a guy with huge upside. And what's the worst case scenario? He goes and gets centered by Nazem Kadri on the second line, which is still really good. By the way, also with these lines, so yeah, then we had Saad, Landeskog, and Kadri on the second line, which is probably good news for Saad, I guess, and like good news for Kadri to get Landeskog. I don't know. I think it's good. Like, maybe you could say it's bad news for Landeskog, but whatever. He's on the top power play. He'll still get points there. But yeah, I guess he hurts and Burakovsky gains a little bit. But yeah, interesting to see what's shaking out there.
So unless I'm wrong, I don't think the tweet is here. I think Landeskog practiced on the second power play.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Would kill Landeskog if true. I don't know if that's 100% true. Last I saw, at least on Daily Faceoff, they had Landeskog second power play.
Okay.
I don't know how true that is, right?
I got to see the tweet, but
I know I'd have to see the tweet, but something to watch if they actually do that. Like,
who bumped him?
I think Burakovsky actually.
Right? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Burakovsky bumped him. So
Guys, whoever's listening, pause the podcast right now and grab Burakovsky out of free agency if you've already drafted and he's out there. Like, don't let him sit there. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, they have Kadri up there on the top power play unit. So the top power play unit is Rantanen, Kadri, Burakovsky, and the second one is Landeskog, Comfort, Yost.
And that makes sense to me. That if you're going to put Burakovsky on the top power play, he bumps Landeskog. He doesn't bump Kadri. Kadri's been a bumper spot player for his whole career.
Kadri's the butt goal guy.
Everybody's got a butt goal guy.
This threat.
But
everyone has one.
But I think, we're talking a lot. I feel like we've repeated a lot here, not to overreact to some of the lines that we're seeing. But this, if I have I do have drafts coming up, and the drafts I have coming up, Landeskog slides significantly, and that's not even if he goes back to the top line, top power play before the season starts, before my next draft. The fact that they're even trying this concerns me, because it's not the first time they've done this, right? They've bumped him, they bumped Rantanen as well, but I think it's more of a risk for Landeskog to get bumped from the top line. And if he gets bumped from the top line and the top power play, we're talking about significant decrease in usage and fantasy relevance.
I also think that I kind of like that line of Landeskog, Kadri, Sad. Honestly, Sad. It's kind of a tough line to play against.
It's really not a bad line.
Yeah,
the ads are so deep. God, I mean, how do you even? They don't have a bad line. They don't have a bad defensive pair. They don't have a bad goalie. It's messed up.
Last year when we were talking about how they finally, they had McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, and no one else. And, we thought they tried to have Soderberg one year, or they had him and Kerfoot and JT Comfort, all these guys who were just guys. And they've really filled it out nicely. Even last year when they added Jonas Donskoy, we're like, oh yeah, that's an upgrade. And now Donskoy, there's not even room for him in that top six anymore because they acquired Brendan Saad for nothing, basically, if I remember right. So yeah, having Burakovsky in there is great. I find it a little hard to believe that Burakovsky is going to spend substantial time on the top line. Nothing's wrong with Colorado.
Yeah.
I don't think they have anything to fix. So I don't see why they would change the game plan from last year or the year before. I mean, they keep not winning the cup, but I don't think I don't know. It doesn't seem like sometimes it's oh yeah, they need to change it up. Their top line and nothing else. With Kadri there, I don't think that's the case anymore. So I'm curious to see. I've stopped drafting Landeskog in leagues because he's kind of like the Elias Lindholm in Colorado, where it's just you can't trust he's going to stay where he's supposed to stay, and his value takes a huge hit when he loses that deployment. So
he's still a guy I would draft. I just his ADP's always been high, right? It's always been.
I would never draft him where I need to draft him now.
Yes.
Right. It's he's one of the guys I would like to have him on my team. I never am going to have him on my team because somebody else is going to take him before me.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of players that are like that this season.
He's gone. So the guys right up ahead of him are Nugent Hopkins, Gaudreau, and Evander Kane. And right behind him are Bergeron, Larkin, and Timo Meier. And I'd prefer, and Teravainen. I'd prefer all those guys over Landeskog. He's just not sure enough of a thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I'd rather just get one of those studs and then grab Burakovsky later on for a fraction of the cost, and maybe he's going to be the one playing with McKinnon and Rantanen. All right, so we can make up some time here. Let's go to the Kings, who have nothing going on. Everything's the same, by the way. So Kopitar, Brown, Iafallo as your top line. Toffoli's gone. Jeff Carter, I guess, is there. I'm seeing him playing with Blake Lizotte, and Athanasiou, who they signed as a free agent. So basically, forget about Jeff Carter, but we already had.
Yep.
Forget about, I guess Brown. Whatever, your last round pick of Dustin Brown in a Bangers league, of course. And then Kopitar probably will figure out a way to get 60, 65, maybe 70 if things break right points, but
always does.
Whatever. I don't know.
I think the most interesting.
I want to like Jeff Carter, but no, he's been shooting a lot more lately.
If I'm done liking Jeff Carter, then you're done liking Jeff Carter.
Yeah, Brandon.
What was his shooting percentage was 6% last season or something.
Oh yeah,
ridiculous.
I mean he was garbage last year, but I and you want to forgive him for it, and I get that because I've been forgiving him for 3 years now.
Look at these line mates. What's he gonna do?
Okay, Carter shot
which is not good.
Carter shot at 9.3% last year and 7.5% the year before. What do you want him to shoot at? 15? Where's 11? It coming from? Where's it coming from? He hasn't shot that much in
that's what happened 2 seasons ago. He had the 6%, and normally he's been 8 to 10, so it was reliable. This year he went back up to 9%, but his on ice shooting percentage has been garbage for 2 years now. It's been under 6% combined for the last 2 seasons, and at some point like, sure, that sucks, but like, honestly, he's been below 8% for 4 of the last 5 seasons. So I can't forgive him anymore.
Yeah.
What happens if he winds up playing with Kopitar?
Has that ever happened?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
but let's say Brown gets hurt.
I still don't believe in him. I believe he gets sent off to like the minors 2 games later.
Well, also like Adrian Kempe was like, I think Kempe or someone like that gets on that line before. I think
that's probably right.
Second line.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay,
Now,
let's move on.
Like he doesn't.
Or
even
I
have
actually do
Toffoli.
have. I do have one question for you guys on it.
Yes.
That's kind of curious. We've talked about this a little bit. Quick and Peterson. Who gets majority starts by end of season?
Elon, it's all you.
I mean, it should be Peterson. I don't see why not. Like Quick, what is the reason to play Quick? Like he's clearly not that great anymore. They're not going to win games anyways. Let's get Peterson some experience that when all of their great prospects start coming in, they've got a good experienced starting goalie ready to go. So who knows what they'll actually do, but I think they should play Cal Peterson, and I would take Cal Peterson as like a guy like in the last round of a draft if he's available for some upside, because he's had great numbers, and I think LA has shown that they can keep the puck out of the net pretty well, even if they can't score goals. So
it's only when Quick's not in the net that they can keep the puck out of the net.
Well, yeah.
Otherwise, it's going in.
Yeah, I mean that would be so annoying if they just do another year of giving Quick all the starts. Let's get Cal Peterson some reps.
Please.
All right, let's go to Minnesota. So here, actually, I was a little disappointed in one thing with these lines. I'm pretty surprised. First of all, the center situation is weird, right?
Oh, gosh.
I actually thought that Marcus Johansson was going to be centering the top line, but it's actually Nick Bjugstad in practice who's been centering Parise and Kaprizov, which I guess makes it the top line. That's the first one listed in this tweet by Dane Mizuti. Wait, no, let me try that again.
Mizutani?
Yeah, Dane Mizutani. But I would have thought that a line with Kevin Fiala is the top line on Minnesota, but he's playing with Bonino, who they traded Lukunin for, and Marcus Johansson. So I don't know. I still believe in Fiala a lot. Like I think he's good enough that he can overcome even playing with Bonino and Johansson. And who knows, maybe things will shift around. But I was kind of more excited to have Fiala and Kaprizov together. I do like Parise though, getting to play with Kaprizov, because I'm really high on Kaprizov. I've been trying to draft him in a lot of leagues. I keep waiting just a little bit too long, and then someone snipes me, which is very annoying. But Parise is another guy you could get in the very last round. I know like Brian loves this take. This has been his take for the last like 5 years. Like get Parise in the last round. He's usually better than people expect him to be. Yeah. And hey, this year I like that he might play with Kaprizov.
So I remember seeing the tweet. This is probably a week ago, maybe a little less, of Johansson centering that top line, and I was like, what? I don't remember him like doing a whole lot of face-off draws. I mean, he can, but to be a primary center on a team, I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. I thought for sure that Nick Bonino was going to be a top line center, which is, I mean, that's a hard thing to say, right? We're talking about Nick Bonino here.
Yeah, like in name only, he will be a top line center.
But technically, you could say he is, because you can say maybe the Fiala line is the top line. Like,
yeah, I mean, I would say he is the best center they have. Eriksson Ek's not far off, but like,
I'd only argue that that's the top line if Kaprizov weren't on the top power play. But with Kaprizov on the top power
Fiala,
play,
right?
Or Kaprizov, Fiala's also on the top power play. Yeah, but that's why to me the weird Bjugstad line feels like maybe maybe it's a 1A 1B line, which is probably more what it is. I think whichever one's kind of working.
Centering that power play unit.
Nobody.
There's no center.
But like, why would you? Like, I feel like if anything, they'll put a centerman out there, win the draw. He'll race off the ice, change out for whoever their fastest skater is, and that'll be the deal. Like, or it'll be like a situation. Mark Letestu, who just retired, like he was on an Oilers power play with Connor McDavid. It's like, what is Mark Letestu doing there? Because he was the only one who could win a draw in the offensive zone to get the power play started. And he actually had some tidy power play numbers along the way. So I don't know if Bonino or Bjugstad has Mark Letestu power play upside here. But like, I just want to know if they do add a centerman, who gets dumped off that line. I really don't know if it's even a forward or a defenseman.
Oh yeah, so we haven't even said what it is. I'll just mention. So tweet by Michael Rousseau. So Kaprizov, Parise, Fiala, and then 2 defensemen, Dumba and Spurgeon. So I'd imagine if they want to put a center there, they're going to take off Dumba or Spurgeon. If things stay the way they are, and they figure out one of these people learns how to take faceoffs, I guess
it'll be Spurgeon. Spurgeon can do everything.
Yeah, he's the captain.
The C on his jersey stands for center.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do like Matt Dumba to maybe bounce back this year. Like, it's just like a year ago, like, well, not a year ago, but like at the beginning of last season, people were super high on Dumba, if you remember, because he had been injured the year before, except for like a short stint at the start where he was like on fire. He was like breaking out. Then he was injured. Then so last year, everyone thought, oh, he'll just continue it. Then it was kind of like, he fizzled out a little bit. Like, he still like played decent minutes, but he didn't have a big offensive breakout. But now who knows, like he's had a lot of time to rest. I don't know what exactly the problem is, but if he's going to be playing like on a power play with Fiala and Kaprizov, you'd think there's points there. And also, I don't know, like, and we've seen some upside in the past. So I like Dumba if he's falling late.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like is that sharing the power play with Spurgeon. I feel like they kind of share power play points a little bit. Like last year, Spurgeon got 13, Dumba got 8. And they played pretty similar time on ice, and they shared that top power play. So I don't know. That's the only thing I don't like about it. But I do think that power play got a little bit better with the addition of Kaprizov, even though no one can take a face-off draw. But I don't know.
I still don't get why they traded Stahl for Johansson. But anyways, okay, so let's
maybe they'll just all line up outside the face-off dot and like race to forecheck the other team once the puck is dropped. So they'll clear it and they'll just lose the first 15 seconds of every power play opportunity.
This sounds like a Mighty Ducks
V and just try to block any forward motion.
I was exactly thinking the same way. Okay, let's go to some more higher scoring teams now to finish off the West. We've got the Sharks, Blues, and Golden Knights. Let's start in San Jose, where they're finally healthy for now, I guess. I haven't seen any line tweets. The best I found was a tweet from Kevin Kurz today where he wrote, Bugner mentions that Leonard was on a line with Hurdle and Kane, and Donato skated with Gregor and Nieto. So I guess reading between the lines, that would mean Meyer with Couture and someone. And the bank, I guess, probably Meyer, Couture, LeBanc, and then Hurdle, Kane, and this Leonard.
I love
Leonard.
I love when we're getting lines that we can't even name. Like, is Leonard a first name or a second name?
I'm Googling Sharks Leonard right now.
I'm already on
John
it.
Leonard.
Who? John Leonard.
I'm on Cap Friendly. Yeah, he's
sounds like a made up person.
It does.
Which he should play for the Devils, who seem to be the team who have the most made up people. That's
true. They do.
Long running take from me. Like the Devils roster has long been full of auto-generated guys from NHL video games.
Okay, so back to the Sharks. So, and forgetting about Leonard, because I doubt that spot is penciled in for him. But like, do we think that as a healthy team, is there more offense to be garnered? Like if they could have Hurdle and Couture and then Kane and Meyer, like it's like a lot of good scorers, you would think. Like they should be able to do well. Or it could be like last year where no one's special.
Makes me excited for Evander Kane if Hurdle can stay healthy, I think more than anything like that, especially in bangers leagues, like that gets me really excited about Evander Kane. And I'm definitely taking Kane pretty early this year in bangers leagues. I mean, aside from his PIMs, he also offers great shots, and his shots were down a little bit last year, but not by much. And that probably had to do with just not having a great center situation for the most part. I guess Kane is one of the highest ones. I'm definitely betting on a Timo Meier bounce back. And even last year, I mean, he wasn't great, but he was still pretty good in bangers leagues. Like he still finished, at least in my bangers league, like top 50 in rank. So he's still a pretty good option at the end of the day, just given his peripherals. And I do think that there's on a healthy team, quite a bit of upside for Timo Meier. So I do like that. I think at the end of the day, though, with them, I think the division is pretty tough outside of, the Anaheim and the Kings and whatnot. Outside of that, I think it's a pretty tough division for them. So I think they will be limited on just the ceiling, because you're going to run into these Golden Knight games, these Blues games. And I mean, even the Kings, I think at their best can be kind of stuffy, right? So I'm high on them in the sense that I think they'll be better than last year. Do I think they're going to be incredible? No. I think, there's a very good chance. But interesting. Hockey Viz, Micah, I forgot his last name. How do you say his last name?
McCurdy.
There you go. Micah McCurdy. He did his season preview, and he has the Sharks at a 35% chance at finishing last in this division, which was kind of shocking to me. I did not expect it to be that bad.
Yeah. He has them as the worst in the division, which I found surprising.
Yeah.
They're really bad. Like they might have they have a thinner or as thin bottom six than the Senators do.
Yeah. It's bad down there. It's brutal.
That's true. But I feel like they've got more offensive pieces. Like they should be able to bail themselves out of more trouble more often, I would think.
I think so.
But
they also have no goalie.
Signing Devin Dubik didn't really help much.
Yeah.
I was joking with Brandon. What do you do with a goaltender that's like a 906 save percentage? You go and sign a goaltender that has a worse save percentage, because that, of course, is going to fix all your goaltending woes.
It'll make Jones look better.
Oh yeah, of course.
It'll
justify everything.
The whole idea of signing Dubnyk was just to give Martin Jones confidence. Hey, you're better than this guy. You can do it. And
you're actually better than another goaltender in the league, believe it or not. You can do this, Martin Jones. You can do this.
And we're paying him $2 million a year just to stand next to you so you can feel good about yourself.
I do like Burns at his value in most drafts. I think he's getting older, but he's one season removed from an 80-point season, and he's had a not great season last year, but it's not like it was horrible when you compared to the field. So,
I mean, most defensemen, if they would have gotten 60-ish points last year, we'd be like, what an amazing year. It's just because Ben Burns has set the benchmark so high. So yeah, people are like now writing him off as like a Giordano, like that's gonna like a 40-point defense. Like Burns, like if Giordano does this year what Burns did last year, we'd be like, great bounce back for Giordano. Yeah. So yeah, it's all
Burns is still likely to, like, again, I feel like I'm the power play guy, but he's still likely to be double shifted on the power play, which, I mean, it's not for nothing. I mean, they seem to not really be able to do a whole lot on the power play for whatever reason, but it's helped Evander Kane.
I mean,
first time he finally got significant power play points was last season, getting 18.
I'm still a believer in Erik Karlsson. I think now he'll be healthy and he'll also help the power play in the offense. So maybe something could happen.
I don't know why. I'm a little surprised that you guys are a little high on Karlsson. Never would have expected it.
Guys,
to be fair, though, I already have changed the name. Look at this stud right here.
Look at that stud.
For those listening and not watching this podcast,
you're missing
this
out.
Audio podcast, Elon held a hockey card of Elon Karlsson. Of Erik
his
Karlsson.
child.
Yeah. I'm gonna name my child Elon Karlsson. That will make a lot of sense. Okay, all right. So let's go to the St. Louis Blues now. Lots of power play tweets coming out today. Scary looking top power play, right? With Hoffman in the picture now. You have Schenn, O'Reilly, Perron, Hoffman, Krug. Oh yeah, Krug also new. So like it's
terrifying.
Like some new players. Like so we have to build some chemistry, I guess. But when like Jaden Schwartz doesn't make the cut, that just goes to show how good your top power play is. So that's great. And as far as the lines go, Luke Korak had some, I guess it was already yesterday, but so Schenn, O'Reilly, Perron, and then what does that leave? Hoffman with Schenn and Robert Thomas centering, I guess, the second line or the first line. So Robert Thomas, if he obviously like eventually Tarasenko comes in and bumps one of these people, but again, that means Jaden Schwartz not in this. I don't know. So I'm not drafting Jaden Schwartz based on these lines that I've been seeing. Although I actually saw a tweet the day before with Schenn, O'Reilly, Perron, Schwartz, Thomas, Hoffman. So who's missing there? I don't know. Then Perron was. I don't know. Anyway, I'm excited about Thomas. In all the situations, we have Thomas as a top six center, centering like Hoffman and Schwartz or
Schenn, I think, is the other one. No, I mean, I guess Schenn could be the other one if they swap in Schwartz. Because it...
Schenn, O'Reilly, and Perron. And then we have Schwartz, Thomas, and Hoffman. It's just like different configurations of all them.
They're just trying that out.
Strongly think we will see Schenn and O'Reilly broken up pretty early into the season, if they even start like that. Like they're both good centers. I like Robert Thomas, but I don't know if we need Schenn on.
Well, but if you could have,
wing?
but if you could have Schenn and Schwartz on the wing, or if you can have Schenn on the wing instead of pushing Thomas to the third line. I mean, they have.
I'd rather just put Thomas on the wing, right? Swap him with Schenn.
I don't know. I'm not a coach.
I don't know. I mean, whatever. But what I do think is that power play one is nasty.
It is
nasty. Like arguably the best centerman in the league for faceoffs. Perron, who's a power play specialist, Hoffman, who's a power play goal specialist, Krug, who's a great quarterback, and then Schenn, who's a guy.
Yeah, poor Jaden Schwartz left out in the cold all of a sudden, and like not even Tarasenko to keep him company.
Yeah. I think Hoffman is going to eat.
Yeah,
I think he's going to feast with this, especially this division. Oh my gosh. I think he's just going to explode on this power play. I do wonder what happens when Tarasenko comes back.
A little bit. I don't think, if anything.
Have you guys been drafting Tarasenko like high in your drafts? Like, what do you expect? The latest is like he's going to get evaluated mid-February, which is like the most vague thing. Like, what? Is he gonna be back
I've been
then?
taking him. I haven't felt bad if I've missed him, basically. So I take him somewhere in the early double-digit rounds if he's still around. But
we've been taking him kind of towards the end of the draft, so the back half more than the back half of the draft. I mean, probably like round 13 or later. Pretty much is what we've been looking at, I think, for that. So that's kind of where we've been taking Tarasenko. I mean, I love this team. I love Hoffman. We've gotten Hoffman, I think, in 2 of our 3 listener leagues so far.
Yeah.
I think I think he's going a little bit under. His ADP has been climbing a little bit, but man, I love Hoffman this season. And I think it actually values Krug a little bit higher too, ever since the addition of Hoffman, because I think there's someone there that can shoot, which is something I was a little bit worried about before the acquisition of Hoffman.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tarasenko
Hoffman is such a great acquisition for them.
When do we find out when he's past his tryout? Like, is that?
Oh, that was
happened?
just on paper, right?
Yeah, I think it was a paper. It was just an
but he
off-paper
hasn't
move.
signed yet. Like, I'm sure it's
No.
gonna happen. I'm just curious. That's all. Like, all the media I see seems to be just counting him as a St. Louis
they
Blue.
basically have to like move the cap space around to be able to fit him in, right? Isn't that the deal? Long-term IR movements and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone get like a PTO and then practice on the top power play and like top line.
It's so
Yeah,
weird.
it's like a
I'm like, all right,
pre-signing.
there's some cap silliness going on right now.
All right,
For
so
Hoffman
one more
to be
team.
on a PTO. Give me a break.
One more team in the West here, going to the Vegas Golden Knights. Another super deep team made that big acquisition of Pietrangelo in the summer. And so I guess we could spend our time talking about Pietrangelo versus Theodore, or we could spend our time looking at the lines, which actually there was one surprise here to me. So we have Karlsson, Marchessault, Smith skating together today, which is like always. Though last year, first at some points, Karlsson was centering Pacioretty and Stone, but it looks like it was not Cody Glass centering Pacioretty and Stone, at least in today's practice. It was Chandler Stevenson, who's always just there, like ruining things for people because he doesn't have any fantasy value. He just takes away fantasy value from someone who could have potentially had fantasy value if they were there. So I guess I'm a little lower. I thought Cody Glass now was going to be potentially a top 6 center, and maybe he could get there. Like, I feel like it's the kind of thing where like they'll give him a shot at some point because we're talking about Chandler Stevenson here, but not as exciting right off the bat. And aside from that, everything seems kind of the same. So I'm kind of more interested to get your takes on the defenseman.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I just want to say first off, Brandon made the claim in the West preview that Shea Theodore will have more points than Torrey Krug end of the season.
That might be a tough take, but we'll see.
I
think it's a very tough take.
That's a solid hot take. Like, it's not
take.
inconceivable. It's a little out on a limb, but I like it.
My hot take on Shea Theodore last time was correct. Last season, he was coming off a 37-point season. I said he will cross 50 pace. He was at 53 at the end of the season.
Nailed it.
I just think,
I will admit Brandon is good at hot takes. I'm not gonna try to make fun of him, but no.
So Pietrangelo versus Shea Theodore, kind of the thing on everybody's mind, I think, when they're talking about drafting either one of these guys. I'm very much of the mindset that Shea Theodore is extremely effective at entering the zone on the top power play. And the power play, honestly, is what matters for either one of these guys to be the next level, right? Like, anytime you talk about, like even more so than forwards, you basically don't draft a defenseman at all unless they're top power play. There's like very few that can do half a point per game or better. It's like Ryan Ellis, and that's it. So, but Shea Theodore, I think, why would they take top power play away from him when he was so effective at zone entries and driving the play, even if they didn't always score so much? It seems like he's playing power play 1, practicing there right now, which makes sense to me. It's not a guarantee he'll hold it all season if he struggles. Like, they obviously have a great solution in Pietrangelo. And Pietrangelo is actually one of the other guys like Ellis, who potentially doesn't even need top power play to be effective for even trade points. That said, I wouldn't take Pietrangelo over Theodore, except maybe in like a league that counts blocks for a lot of points or something. Points league with like big number values on blocks. That probably makes some sense. But Theodore shoots like a madman. He was shooting over 4 shots, like Burns numbers at the and Dougie Hamilton numbers for that matter, at the end of the playoffs. So I have a lot. I think he has a ton of upside, especially if he can click on the power play even more.
Yeah, I have no concerns about Theodore. Like, with Pietrangelo, like, I guess what you sort of suggested, like, there's a bit of a shorter leash. Let me say, there's a bit of a shorter leash if Theodore struggles, but like, he struggled for half a season last year, even though everything was going as it should. The pucks just weren't going in for him, and so the Golden Knights have been through that with him. I don't think that what they learned last year was that the solution is to replace him. The solution is that he's really good, and all things being normal, he's going to be just fine and better than just fine. So yeah, Pietrangelo being in Vegas to me doesn't I actually like that it deflates Theodore's draft value a bit. Like I've been in a couple drafts where I've seen Pietrangelo go before Shea Theodore just because everyone's like the assumption is, oh, he's going to take over. That's why they got him. That's not why the Golden Knights got Alex Pietrangelo. They got Alex Pietrangelo because they could. That's like the only reason Vegas seems to do anything with like getting Stone and Pacioretty and now Pietrangelo. I mean, and Leonard. It's not just because they can; it's because they think it makes them a better team, of course. But
right.
They make these moves. They bring in the best players available, and obviously it works for them. And they're cup contenders again. But I don't think that threatens Shea Theodore's status.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd agree.
I don't like disagree in terms of like that makes a lot of sense of how it'll play out. But I think it's a little bit like, I don't know, like out there, just be like, I'm not concerned at all. Like for sure. Well, like, I mean, like we learned last year that even when Theodore, like last year, they didn't have Pietrangelo, who has proven to be a very strong top power play quarterback. So you've got to at least leave room for the possibility that Landeskog, or I don't know why I said Landeskog all of a sudden, but Pietrangelo ends up quarterback in the top power play. It could happen. So like, just because you say you don't think it'll happen, but it's not like a 0% chance and 100% chance. So I would definitely leave some room for doubt. But maybe that's just me being cautious.
I mean, I'd agree.
One aside about, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. This is your boy. You know what? You can say.
I'm not even talking about Shea. I was going to change the subject real quick before we move off. But
you can change it. It's okay. No, you change it.
Good.
Yeah.
We're done talking about Shea Theodore. All my takes were correct. Chandler Stevenson. If I remember right, he's a decent Bango guy. So if he's able to find chemistry on even strength, he might find value late in banger leagues. Maybe. I don't know. Like I think he in really deep leagues, I would at least look at him. Because he did show some pretty decent chemistry with them in the playoffs, Pacioretty and Stone.
He's not that much of a Bango guy for what it's worth.
Look at his postseason, because he really didn't play much until postseason.
He played 14 minutes ish last year. He was on a 92 shot pace, 66 hit pace, and 40 block pace. That's a Bango guy to you?
In the postseason?
No, that's regular season.
Yeah, in postseason,
I'm talking about postseason.
Yeah, 35 hits in 20 games, so a little bit of an uptick. So it's.
I mean, that's over 100 hit pace, well over.
I mean, if you're in a deep enough league,
if you're in a deep enough league, sure.
And like a guy centering Stone and Pacioretty, that also gives you some hits. Is not someone to.
You could get Garbo assists, lots of secondary assists. It'll be fine.
Maybe some butt goals here or there.
Maybe some butt goals.
So you know what, guys? I think we've done a pretty good job here. We've gone through 2 divisions. It's 4 of us on a podcast with no prep and no practice. I don't think we interrupted each other too often. So I'm going to consider this a raging success. Thank you so much for coming on, Keeping Karlsson. Before we jump over to the other podcast feed and record on yours, why don't you tell people how they can find that and all of your other amazing podcasts?
Well, you can go to our Twitter at Fantasy Hockey PD is one way. You can also just go to your favorite podcast provider and look up Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Or if you prefer to see all our beautiful faces, you can go to YouTube and type in Fantasy Hockey Podcast, and our YouTube channel will show up there, where we also do some videos. So, and we, live stream some drafts and everything. So that's the other way to do it. But if you just like listening to our voices and hate our faces, understandable. You can also just listen to us on the podcast side.
That'd be my option. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So
better heard, not seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm Brian, and I want to just say to all the listeners, there's room, by the way, to listen to. If you only listen to us and you don't listen to Fantasy Hockey Podcast, like we wholeheartedly recommend, if you want to be successful in fantasy, you probably want to be listening to more than just one. Subscribe to more than just one Fantasy Hockey Podcast. So why not listen to the one called Fantasy Hockey Podcast? So I listen to them; they're great. So definitely, you want to check it out if you never have.
Yeah, I really think we both occupy somewhat of a little bit of a different space too sometimes with the advice we give, which is really perfect. I think your guys' weekly advice especially just completely sometimes I think fits that niche or that hole of what we're missing, and sometimes we complement. It's a great team. If you're listening to 2 Fantasy Hockey Podcasts, I'd say it's us too. There's some good ones out there too.
No, this is it. All right, so thanks so much for coming on. Looking forward to talking about the Central and the East. Well, who am I leaving out? Oh, well, yeah, okay, whatever. So I'm going to name every. There's a lot of good hockey podcasts in terms of like fantasy hockey podcasts. We've got Fantasy on Ice.
Yeah, 5-hole fantasy hockey.
What do you mean? Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's true. Oh yeah, then there's also. Oh yeah, there's a few. The one with Victor.
I mean, we wouldn't have had to name them all if you just for no reason doubled down on us being the only 2 worth listening to.
I'm subscribed actually to quite a few. Victor and Jesse Severe Fantasy Hockey Life, amazing podcast. Okay, so that's it for this show. Really looking forward to talking to you guys some more. So thanks everyone for listening. Hop on over to Fantasy Hockey Podcast feed and check out the other two. So we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Sweet.
Maybe I'll edit out that part with the podcast.
Just cut the whole end. We just hard
cut that
close.
cut that whole part. Hard close. Just full stop on the episode.
I'm going to try just super quickly, just for myself. So thanks so much again for coming on, guys. And looking forward to talking to you on the other podcast feed. Bye. Oh, wait, maybe I'll be able to slice it in
better.
somehow.
Wow, well done.
All right. So I'm ready to just go right in.
We stop
so you
these
guys-
recordings and start
Yeah.
new files.
Let me just grab a cup of water real quick, and then we can jump into ours.
We are starting new recording files, right?
If you'd like.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be good. I'm gonna record the Zoom. And that should, in theory, be enough. Brandon, you're gonna record. Do you want to try to record the Zoom too? So then we just have two fail safes.
I tried. I couldn't get it passing through properly. So
Do you mind giving permission to record, please, Elon or Brian? I'm not sure who has. The
Oh,
hosting
that's Elon.
power.
1 sec.
Perfect. No worries. I'm just gonna grab a cup of water quick.
yeah, me get water too. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't have a track for me.
I'm sorry.
Oh boy. Okay. I'll have your Zoom track. Hopefully that recorded well, or else we have nothing.
Please forgive me.
Okay.
Well, we have YouTube.
I
also.
guess it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
So you could turn it on for this one though.
Yeah. Well, if they want it.
Okay.
You're not
They
editing
want it, I
this one.
think.
All right.
Okay. Oh wait, I need to give him. How do I do that? I've never done this actually. I might need advice. How do I give him recording access?
I think it
I'll
might
ask
be
them.
under like security or
Oh, security. Here it is.
maybe. I think it
Allow
might be there.
participants to share screen, chat, rename themselves, unmute themselves, start video. I don't see an option. Do you want to just I don't see an option.
Let's
Maybe
see.
I
I
have
can
to
try
stop.
to.
I'm recording right now.
I think you just have to give permission. Let me see real quick.
I could just continue to record though, and then just send
Oh,
you
yeah,
the
that
full
could-
thing. Why don't we just do that?
Okay, that works.
I promise I'll send it.
Yeah, that's okay.
And Brian and I will also give you our own Audacity files.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, if we record the Zoom video and audio, that should be enough, I think.
Mhm.
Okay.
least for
So
intents
you're
and
good. So
purposes.
should I record my own or you're good?
No, you should still record. Local is always the best. IMO.
Well, but you're not the editor here.
But I want us to sound. I want you to sound good. On
But if
his
they're not going to
podcast.
use it,
Okay.
do you want me to? I'm happy to. It's just if Elon tells me to, and you guys don't even want it, then it's a waste of my computer's precious resources.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we have the Zoom files, it'll be enough. I think, at least for me, I think it'll be enough because we're all piping in our mics, right? So, in theory, it should be enough. I think.
All right. Well, hopefully this Zoom recording goes well.
I concur. Elon's just going to make you feel really bad about your decision.
No, it's fine.
It's okay. It's okay. I've done it only once before, but I think we'll be okay.
But why not just
It'll
have
be-
our own Audacity file?
So the only reason I'm scared of doing the Audacity files because how massive because I edit everything in Premiere. So
Oh, I
I'll
see.
put everything into Premiere for the YouTube video and I'm just
Oh.
thinking of 4 separate audio files and how massive that file will be to export.
Okay.
Just-
Brandon said that he's recording it all also, right? If you had
He
some
is.
master
He's
recording going?
I'm recording my
yeah.
own because I couldn't get it to
Oh,
pass
just
through.
your
So I
own.
probably don't need to anymore. But
Okay, well, hopefully then my recording will be good of the Zoom call. It says it's recording. It's been recording the whole time.
yeah,
can-
you might as well.
I think I can get I can pass through all the audio as well, just in case. Let me do that really quick.
So I think for our side,
so
Gam,
these
you
two
just
should
want to
be
read off all the
good.
teams
Okay.
as
I
opposed
think we'll be
to
fine.
us alternating.
Okay.
Brian, how about
So,
do you want to just
Brandon, do you want to have the game day line tweets and you can kind of bring up the teams? Or we
Wait,
can
you
take
want me to
turns,
bring 'em
I
up?
guess, doing the teams.
You want me to?
Is your mic on? Can I not hear you? Oh, I can't hear you, I think.
Okay.
This is a good start.
I hear you. I hear everybody.
So Elon
So
sounds
Brian,
like a brag. I
I get
hear
it.
everyone.
Yeah,
Do you
not
want?
broken.
Do you want?
Brian,
to
so
take
how about
going
let's
first?
We could take let's just take turns going first. Exactly.
Okay.
So like when they throw to us. So how about I'll take the first time going first, and then after that we'll alternate going first.
Fine. Sure.
Oh, do you want to go first?
I
No,
saved the
you go
whiskey
first
for
first.
our stream. I'll let you guys.
Nice. Is that
be
Ardbeg?
sane without me drinking.
Hopefully this
Now it's our show.
This is weird.
Oh.
All of a sudden, just can't hear anything. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Great. Always love to see it.
You don't need to hear us to do a podcast.
Can you hear us now?
I
Nope,
hear
I can't
everything.
you either. Oh wait, give me.
AirPods real quick.
Do you hear us, Brandon?
Yes. I do.
Okay. It's just gonna be. I told my wife I'd be done at 10. That was a lie.
Have you guys done anything with Fantasy on Ice before?
Weird. So all of a sudden stopped working. I think Brandon did something.
We haven't done
Brandon.
anything with Fantasy on Ice before, have you?
We have. We had Pete Jensen on the show a few times.
Well, they've done something with us.
Oh, right. True.
I
Yeah, they
don't
haven't
know,
been- That's true.
It's Pete Jensen too.
What did I say?
Nick?
Nick Jensen's a hockey player, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I can't hear Gamby.
He's in troubleshooting mode.
Oh. Yeah, so no, we haven't. Well, we know we know Pete sort of.
Oh.
But you? Like have you guys ever done?
We've like barely interacted with him on Twitter and like here and there. But
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice if we invited him onto our show.
But,
you know?
I mean, they're fine. Everyone.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I do feel like them being part of a bigger entity makes things always more complicated, but
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, for
Did
sure.
I miss some tea?
Well,
Welcome
we
back.
are still like streaming live, by the way, everybody.
I know.
I'm not talking trash. I know that we're still live here.
You would never. You would never. Okay, let me pull up the divisions really quick. Does it?
I think.
Is your audio coming through on your AirPods now?
Yeah, your audio went down.
Yeah. Oh, did it? Sorry, hold on. Let me fix that. Apologies. Yeah, I don't know what happened with all my audio. It just went weird. Yeah. Okay, hold on.
Everyone who's watching us is getting to see how the sausage is made. All this good behind the scenes.
Oh, you should have seen our live stream the other day. My audio just went completely whack. No one could hear Brandon.
No.
Something happened to mine. And I just straight up couldn't have Brandon. So I was the intermediary between what Brandon was saying and the audience. And it was fun, but it was still just a complete mess. I had no idea. It's so hard to keep up with everything, but it worked. Okay. So let's pull up these new divisions. So we're going to do the East and the Central, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we start with the Central and then we'll move into the East.
And then Brian and I will alternate in who talks first, and I'll talk first.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah. And if we want to move a
Right,
little
look up
quicker on
what
this one,
these-
because I know it's a little later, what we can do too is it easier to throw players to you guys or just kind of throw the lines and be like, okay, let's discuss the lines?
I don't know. You could just throw us like any question or just
Okay.
ask thoughts, and we'll roll with it.
Okay. Cool.
Great.
Sounds good.
So when your audio stopped working, I was asking, do you want to read off all the teams or do you want me to?
I think you want to alternate because it's kind of how we do the preview, right? I'll just be like, okay, Brandon, you want to jump us into like the Panthers or something like that?
Yeah. Okay.
Or just like you can just same way we do the previews. I think we can just flow.
I think we
through it.
start Central, go alphabetical.
Start Central.
Go East.
Yeah, start Central, go alphabetical. Wait, Google doesn't go alphabetical, so that's a problem.
I don't know
Yeah,
what
but-
the words you just said mean.
What? How does that not make sense?
What doesn't go alphabetical?
Okay, you know what? Actually, okay, never mind. At the NHL, actually, the NHL itself has alphabetical. Okay, we're
Yeah,
good.
I'm just looking at the picture. The thing you just
Okay.
tweeted, I think. Yeah.
Okay,
Got chatted.
let's do it. Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It is time for the very special episode that we talked about. Yes, it is keeping Karlsson back on the show. A lot of people asked for it, but we have Brian and Elon back. Unfortunately, they are not kicking Brandon off the show. Brandon also had to join in, but we do have Brandon as well. But
Rude.
I know for all of you, I mean, let's be real. People are
I disapprove
less
of this
ex-
intro.
Of course you
That
do.
was
You know what?
actually
Look,
the condition that we came on the show was only if Brandon was here.
I know it's everyone kind of wanted me kicked out, but I had the condition that I had to be on the show. I wasn't happy to just edit it. So unfortunately, I'm on the show, I guess is the right way to do this intro. But anyways, Keeping Karlsson is on the show with us. We're going to walk through some of the lines so far. So we're going to go through the Central Division and the East Division and go through what the lines are at right now and just take a stab at what it means for certain players. And in case you're wondering where the North and the West is, if you care about the West, honestly, there's like 2 teams in the West, so maybe you care about 2 of those. But if you care about those divisions, go over to the Keeping Karlsson episode. So the episode where we do the same for the North and the West division is on the Keeping Karlsson side. And I'll give them in a second a way to tell you how to find their amazing podcast in case you somehow haven't heard of them yet, because they came far before us. They are the elite podcast for fantasy hockey. And so how about before all of this, you guys tell people where to find you?
You're too kind. Yeah, thanks for having us on. Really excited. We already recorded those first 2 divisions and it was a blast. Yeah, check it out on our feed. So you can find it just by searching for Keeping Karlsson as an Eric Karlsson, not John Karlsson, because we still believe in Eric Karlsson here on this podcast.
Not that we don't not believe in John Karlsson.
He's fine. He's okay.
I never thought of that. There's a lot of longevity to your podcast by the nature that you can change the Karlsson to a different spelling and it still makes sense.
We have a
William
lined
up
that we're running. In our fantasy league, we have a whole bunch of divisions named after all the different Karlssons. There's Linus, there's Melker, there's William, and who knows who's coming down the pipe. But okay, yeah, so just search for Keeping Karlsson on your podcast feed. You'll find it. It was a really fun episode. I know it because we already recorded it. But now I'm really excited for this one.
Well, so let's jump in to the Central Division. That's where we're going to start off first. So let's go over first to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who honestly, for the most part, seems pretty much what we expected a little bit. This is tweeted on January 5th. We're recording this January 5th, a very crazy day in the world. And here we are talking about fantasy hockey lines. It actually feels really good. So let's start off with them. Tessier, Dubois, and Bjorkstrand on the top line. And then the second line is Foligno, Domi, and Atkinson. Kind of surprised, actually, that Domi got that second line deployment. And then on defense, the predictable Werenski, Jones pairing, and Korpisalo and Merzlikins in net. So how do you guys feel about those lines? Like, does anyone increase in value for you, decrease in value? Is it what you expected? Where are you at?
It's actually interesting. So you thought that Mikko Koivu was going to be centering the second line instead of Domi?
Yeah, I didn't expect Domi to be top 6. I thought he'd be kind of pushed out of that, but apparently I was wrong.
Well, I mean, this is the practice lines. So Tortorella has lots of time to learn to hate Max Domi, and so we'll see what happens. Yeah, I guess to me, it's like I expected this because we saw at the end of last year and into the playoffs with Bjorkstrand and Texier playing with Dubois. If anything, it just makes me as excited as I already was for Texier, because also we saw that he made, well, actually, the power play lines that were tweeted, he wasn't on that top unit. He was on one with Domi, Werenski, Grigorenko, and Bemstrom. But yeah, like I think Bjorkstrand, and obviously Bjorkstrand, right? I feel like we've already just assumed that Bjorkstrand is like there. It's like not that long ago that he was like a nobody in fantasy as someone like maybe he'll be good one day. And all of a sudden, like at the end of last season, he totally broke out. And now once again, he's bumped Atkinson from that spot with Dubois. So I don't see any reason why Bjorkstrand just can't continue to go on that tear that he started last year.
Yeah, I mean, Bjorkstrand to me is the sleeper for the year. That's what it feels like. Brandon always, what do you always say about Bjorkstrand? You say that Bjorkstrand is what we always thought Atkinson would be, or is what we want Atkinson to be, right?
Yeah, he's what we always wanted Atkinson to be already, basically.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. You know, Tessier is an interesting one. I did not expect Tessier to get that top line deployment. That's kind of interesting, at least for deeper leagues and especially like dynasty leagues and whatnot. I'm kind of interested about that.
Yeah, well, you look at who else is in that top 6, and like usually when you see a strange line combination in preseason, you're like, oh well, he's going to be bumped for, and then you look down the line and it's like no one. Like there's really, like, the only way I could see Texier bumped is, I mean, but if they want him to play center on the third line, which they've sort of had him penciled in to do in the past, but now they have Koivu and Boone-Jenner, both of who can do that job, are practically made for that job. So I guess the only other name to consider here might be someone like Emil Bemstrom, who I know Elon likes as somebody who could come out of nowhere and like make an impact and sort of be the Bjorkstrand of this year, if that makes sense. You know, the way you could pick Bjorkstrand off the waiver wire. And then like we saw that opportunity coming for him. We were so excited for him to get it. I'm so glad he got it. But with any of these guys, I'm still like, my constant line is that the opportunity in Columbus is limited. Like it's extremely unlikely that any Blue Jacket is going to be able to score more than 70 points. And I honestly think it's going to be a struggle to even get all the way up to 70 points. And if you need an example, Look at Artemi Panarin, right? Who was a point per game guy in Columbus. Fantastic. It's like, oh, is that all he can do? No, he like was way over a 100-point pace his first year with the Rangers. And so like you see that the Columbus and Tortorella do play a system that chokes some of the offensive potential out of these guys, which is a shame. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you should overlook guys like Bjorkstrand and Dubois. And Texier does make a decent late round flyer if he does hang around on the top line with them beyond training camp.
Yeah. I do wonder what he can do on the top power play for whatever reason he can find his way on there, which I doubt. I mean, you could always have Foligno maybe on the top line too, because we know how much Tortorella loves Foligno.
Loves him.
Loves Nick Foligno
hits
forever.
a lot. So don't forget about him in
does.
banger leagues. He
For
hits a lot.
And he's still on the top power play. I guess I'll mention also Seth Jones. Sometimes Columbus goes with two defensemen on the top power play, but as the lines that were tweeted out today or yesterday, I had Seth Jones on the top power play and then Werenski on PP2. So I think Jones has been following a lot in a lot of leagues this year because last year he wasn't so exciting offensively. But if he's back on the top power play and Bjorkstrand is having this breakout continue, that's probably great news for Seth Jones. Maybe you should bump him up a little bit.
Yeah,
Nick Foligno, by the way, is one day going to retire, and John Tortorella is going to put a top power play unit out of 4 skaters just in tribute to the missing Foligno.
I feel like he'd immediately get hired as an assistant coach. He always needs to be next to Tortorella somehow, some way. He needs to be there. It's not right if Foligno's not there. So that is Columbus. I mean, I think
I want to add one little thing about Seth Jones. Small anecdote. I definitely hear you about how everybody fades, or well, rightfully, honestly, for the longest time would fade Seth Jones off of his ADP, whatever was given in the preseason. He was always a little bit overrated, and then people would kind of realize, like, wait a minute, like, what am I actually getting here? And then he would kind of fall to where he should be drafted towards, a third defenseman or something that may not get you a lot of power play points. If he is able to keep top power play for any good amount of time, and actually, like, if they can make something happen on the power play, for the love of God, could they not be the last place team on the power play? Jones could really break out. I was actually weirdly able to get him at like pick 166 recently, and I didn't even want him. It was like, you're gonna give me this much value, I can't continue to not draft Seth Jones at this point.
I'm also going to throw out that he's taken some heat in the quote unquote analytics community for just not being as good a defenseman as everyone's just assumed him to have been over the course of his career, which, I mean, unfortunate for his on ice play, should it be true. And I think they have a point, but great that it does knock down his fantasy value and is probably one of the reasons he's falling in your drafts. Solid floor. You can count on him for 40 points at least, hopefully more, especially with some good power play deployment, great peripheral contributions too. Seemingly very underrated. I'm actually looking in our listener league, the Cupful, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Jones was drafted 83rd overall on average, and Werenski 78th. So they're pretty much being drafted one after the other.
That makes sense.
I do think this news gives Jones a little bit of a bump up, though. Like Elon said, I definitely like the fact that Jones is solo on the power play. That'd be huge for him if that does stick.
Seeing these lines make me quite happy about getting him as late as I did.
That's crazy. That's crazy value that you got, Brandon.
Yeah,
that league is, by the way, the Fantasy Hockey Trades Hockey Fights Cancer Charity League. So it's against a bunch of other Twitter personalities and analysts, and for a good cause,
for sure.
And so I get to smoke people with my Seth Jones in the 12th or whatever.
You're going to hold that against
for charity.
You always do. So, Brandon, you take us into Chicago, which is the next team here in the Central.
Wait, we just skipping Carolina? I'm going to Carolina. Leave me alone.
Is Carolina second?
I don't know.
Carolina is second. I guess so.
Carolina's first,
you know what? Actually, technically, Carolina's
but...
first. I screwed this up already. Yeah, just take us to wherever.
It doesn't matter. Who
go.
cares?
Start over.
Division at least.
Just start the whole
you didn't
thing
say
over.
Boston or something. And Carolina's interesting, right? I feel like I have a feeling a lot of listeners already know where this is going.
Just say what you want to say.
One of the most hyped players that we were kind of warning, we don't really know what to expect from a line perspective from Carolina in general, but especially for Svechnikov himself, who's being taken, sometimes late first even. Anyway, Svechnikov currently playing with Trocheck and Jesper Fast, and Niederreiter is playing with Aho and Teravainen.
2 days in a row now, by the way.
Yeah, this continues. They've made a point to say Nino again on Aho line with Teravainen.
Yeah, I think it's so an intro. I just want to chime in really quick here because I know where Brandon's going to go with this. I
I'm
don't
not going
think it
anywhere.
necessarily
just like,
means.
just
Oh, I
let
know
that
exactly. You know
marinate,
exactly
right?
what you're trying to say here. You're trying to say I'm right. But anyways, I don't think it means Svetch is off of the top line for good. I think it just, to me, if I were thinking about Svetch at anywhere near his ADP, it would scare me that now it's 2 practices in a row he's not there. They're at least thinking about it. There's that possibility that Svetch can come off that top line. So I guess I'll throw it now to the Keeping Karlsson crew. I think Svetch is the guy to talk about on this, obviously. Svetch and Nino are the 2 to talk about. So what does this change anything for you guys when it comes to Svetch?
I'm just having terrible deja vu. I know you're asking me about Svechnikov, but I cannot stop feeling the way I felt last season about Nino Niederreiter starting on the top line when like I still held a candle for Nino Niederreiter going into last season. I thought, he's never had a ton of sustained opportunity. When he was traded to Carolina, he like just caught fire and was amazing and seemed to have earned himself a spot in the top 6, a really good spot. And he started there at the start of the season last year, and he was awful. He lasted about 15 games there and then got another turn around game. Just looking at the Hockey Viz line combo data here. He got another like 20 game turn around the 20 game mark of the season. And again, did absolutely nothing with it. And I am ashamed to say he was on my roster for far too many of those like 30 combined games where he was on the top line doing nothing. Meanwhile, Svechnikov was not up there and he didn't miss a beat. Like he was just destroying the world in the first, I don't know if you remember that at the start of last season.
Insane.
Yeah, he started with like pointless in his first game. What the hell, Svechnikov? But then 2 points each in each of his next 4 games. So he had no problem producing consistently away from Aho and Teravainen. So I'm really like, honestly, I'm not that concerned about Svechnikov here, and I'm doing my very best to not have my interest peaked about Nino Niederreiter.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me Nino Niederreiter. But no, I definitely will not draft Nino Niederreiter. I know,
How long
but
were you holding on to that one? I feel like you were just waiting.
I was hoping that Brian would be into Niederreiter so I could make fun of him, but he's already taken care of saying he's let that go. I'm definitely also with Brian that like I'm not worried at all about Svechnikov. If I have a draft coming up, I'm like hoping I'm going to be like sending this tweet to everyone in my league. I'm like, oh, don't draft Niederreiter. Look, he's on the second line with Trocheck and Fast. Forget about him. And then hopefully I can get him because he's like, I don't think people even realize last year he was so amazing, right? Almost a like 75-point pace. He wasn't even outside of being a teenager. He was 19 years old. This will be his first year as his 20s. Like, I feel like just the sky's the limit on this guy. And I don't think it really even matters what line he's on, but also I just think that probably he is going to get a long look, if not most of the season on the top line anyway with Aho and Teravainen.
What position would you draft him in? I think the concern that I have with Svetch is that, at least on Yahoo, his ADP is something like 17, which my kind of mantra on early picks is I don't gamble at all on my early picks. I look for high floor guys with decent ceilings, and I don't see that in Svetch. I feel like his floor is still reasonably low. Like even if he produced it last season, maybe he's worth 17 overall at a 75 point pace guy with decent peripherals. It's not like he didn't have great shots either. I feel like everybody remembers him as an amazing shooter. He didn't even shoot 3 times a game.
Yeah,
which is like, I feel like that's the minimum of like great shooting to me.
I hear that. And like, while you're talking about floor in your early picks, like I'm like, that's one way I'm concerned. I'm also concerned about ceiling. And, if you look at Aho as the guy to beat on Carolina, point per game, right? Which is great, fantastic. But it's sort of the same way that I would never draft Vladimir Tarasenko in my first few rounds when other people were, or maybe first few rounds is going a little far. But, I want somebody who has that 90, 100 point upside. And I think Svechnikov might have that in the prime of his career, which I think he's probably still at least 2 years away from being in. So yeah, in the meantime, I feel like in the Cupful, he was drafted at 21st on average. The earliest he was drafted was 17th. The latest was 29th. So I feel like that is like, he seems like a second round or early third round kind of pick, but I don't think he's making it out of the second round in a lot of drafts.
Yeah, I think to me, the thing that will cap Svech's ceiling this year, if he doesn't get that top line, is just his minutes. I think his minutes will cap that ceiling more than anything, just especially him being a shooter, right? Like if he's a shooter and a kind of goal first guy, which I don't necessarily know if he is anymore, which is kind of interesting. I always thought of Svech as his goal first guy, but I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore with Svech. But, with all his shooting and such a great shooter that he is, that shot pace will kind of depend on the minutes. I think if he were given top line minutes, he'd explode. I think we'd easily see as easily as you get, I guess, easily see like a 90-point pace out of the guy potentially. But as long as he's on that second line, I feel like he is kind of capped at that 75, I guess, to point per game pace in a way, which isn't terrible at that point. But then again, you're also seeing a kind of a lower floor.
Just remember, like, I don't know, like to me, like I'm not buying these lines. So it's like,
yeah,
I know some lines we're talking about, like we're saying like, oh, like when we talked about like Colorado, I was like, oh, maybe Burakovsky does stick on the top line, but like this one just seems like, come on, I just don't buy it. So we'll see.
Tell me something. I'm curious before we move on from Carolina, because we can talk about Svech for 3 hours, but where is Svech going in your couple drafts versus Stamkos?
That's a
higher.
Funny question, because Stamkos, his ADP is 21.3, and Svechnikov is also 21.3. They're going like back to back.
Stamkos
literally.
is an easy winner in that one to me.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
So. Yeah, and that speaks to what you were saying,
Stamkos,
right? His floor is higher, his ceiling's higher. I don't know why. Stamkos has been drafted as early as 11th overall, which is 6 spaces ahead of the earliest Svechnikov has been drafted.
But take him. Probably.
Yeah,
the concern with Stamkos
he's a legit first rounder.
The concern with him would be the injury, right? And like, is he fully healthy? And maybe some people were also worried right when our draft started. That was when Kucherov injury news came out, and some people like got a little gun shy. I'm not too worried about Stamkos because of Kucherov, but I think the health does concern me a little bit.
I think that the Kucherov injury is good for him. I think he becomes the trigger man even more than he was.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know. I could be wrong, but anyway, that's not even. We're way off topic.
Well, we could go to Tampa Bay.
We could go to Tampa Bay. You know what? Let's go to Tampa Bay. Who cares about order?
Let's just
why not?
Going.
Let's just go. You know what? I started out of order, so now we're staying out of order. You guys, I've screwed everything, and we're going to stick with it. So here are the lines for the Tampa Bay Lightning right now. We've got Palat. This was January 6th. Palat, Point, and Stamkos. And then Boulay, Barre. I don't know how to say that. Colton and Johnson. And then you've got Smith, a bunch of names I can't pronounce, but there's the other guys don't matter. So don't worry about it. But the top 2 lines are what matter the most. So you've got Palat, Point, and Stamkos. What about Palat? Because I think that's the one everyone's going to ask about. We know about Point. We know about Stammer. What about Palat?
I mean, I'm not going to let Palat go undrafted in any of my drafts. So like if he's like still around and it's like the last round, he's like an obvious, because just the upside, like he already in the playoffs last year was getting on the top power play and getting good deployment, and he like kind of capitalized. Like he was really valuable in playoff pools. He had 18 points in 25 games. That's a 60-point pace. And now he's like even more assured to hold a top power play spot and like a top line with Point and Kucherov. Like it's probably some of the best deployment in the league. Like this again reminds me of like our Burakovsky conversation, like similar. And like, I feel like Palat is someone who has a lot of upside and not as much floor as usual, because there's fewer people that could bounce him off of the top power play since Kucherov's out of the picture.
Yeah.
He hits too, which is nice. I mean, he doesn't shoot very much, but he does hit.
Yeah, so like in a bangers league, or as you guys say, bango league, he'll definitely help you there. He also does like okay for blocking shots as a forward too. Should you care? Like a block a game last season is pretty good as far as a forward goes.
It's not gonna really.
Yeah. And then just his power play potential is really exciting for him, because he's this really super steady 50-point producer from the second power play unit. His power play totals the last 3 years have been like he's averaged about 10 points over an 82 game pace. So now, I feel like you just pop 10 onto that, and suddenly you've got a 60-point Palat, maybe disguised still in your draft as a 50 to 55 point guy, especially with those hits, can be super valuable.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of impressive that he got 8 power play points last season with only about a minute on the power play per game. Average power play time on ice about a minute-ish. Still got 8 power play points, 25% of the team's power play. Like that's pretty dang good still. And now he's going to that top power play. He's going to play below the goal line. So I guess this was tweeted out yesterday, but it seems that the top unit right now is Point on the right circle, Hedman up top, Stamkos on the left circle. Makes sense. Johnson in the slot, and Palat below the goal line. Could be really interesting.
Johnson is interesting if he's able to keep that. I can't imagine actually wanting to have him because I can't imagine he keeps it. But in the slot on a team like that, like they need somebody there. It's not gonna be Kucherov hanging out in power play one anymore. But
his 5-on-5 play brings him down.
I mean, he's playing. I imagine he's playing on the second line. We saw some other second lines which involved. I think it was Killorn on the left, Cirelli in the middle, Johnson on the right.
Yeah.
I see Johnson and Coleman probably flip flopping occasionally.
Yeah.
Depending
Tyler
on
Johnson's
matchups.
probably one of the people that I've like added and dropped the most in my fantasy career.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
he's just like
I feel like a lot of us have that sentiment of like, he's doing well, he's gone, completely
He and
gone.
Palat.
What's happening?
and Killorn
Palat too.
And
Killorn.
all these Tampa guys and Yanni Gourde and like Cedric
Oh, gosh.
Paquette once upon a time and Matthew Joseph. Like I can name 7 random Tampa guys who are just like, oh, they're playing on the top line. I better grab them. This year though, there's really just that one place to be. So we'll see if Palat can hold it the whole way
I think he
through.
will. I think he will.
unless he gets injured.
Yeah.
Here's a hot take. Or a hot question, because I don't know if I'm going to make the take, but like, what do you think? Like, why isn't Sergachev on that top unit? Like, why put Palat and Johnson there and not just like, I get like the way they're positioned. Like, you've got Stamkos to take the big shot from the left circle. You've got Hedman up top. So maybe you don't need Sergachev there, but I wonder if they could work him in somehow.
Well,
I think if they did, it would mean they would need to restructure their power play deployment. Like the fact they even have Palat behind the goal line means like they're really utilizing their players at the dots. So I'm not quite sure where Sergachev winds up. Although we did see a few games where they tried Sergachev above Hedman in the playoffs on the power play. Not very often, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try that here and there as well this season. But I feel like Sergachev is still, and I was going to ask you guys this, what you thought about Sergachev this season, but my opinion is I think Sergachev is probably still a year or so away from them really wanting to start swapping him into that role full time. But he might see more opportunities, especially if Tampa starts to like run away with the division, and then like, why not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say he's still only 22, so like there's a lot of room for him to grow. Hedman's 30, so like that's the age balance we're all sort of watching. But yeah, I don't know that this is the year. Like, but we always say that, and then he always supplants Hedman for no conceivable reasons. Like everything,
all of a sudden.
Yeah, Elon, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to say it doesn't matter almost like, but obviously things could change. But there's been times where we've, pulled our hair out on the podcast and been like, oh no, it's Sergachev on the top power play. And I haven't. Then you look at the box score and every game it's Sergachev getting, maybe a half point per game and Hedman just piling up the points. Like it almost just seems like this deployment. Normally in fantasy, we care about deployment and that is a good way for us to predict what will happen. But it seems like with these Tampa defensemen, it's just Sergachev's maybe going to get you 40 to 45 point pace and Hedman's going to have like a 60 plus point pace and it almost doesn't matter. So we'll see. But obviously, like you said, Sergachev is very young, so he still has room to grow.
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing as me. But this year, I think it's too early. I think it might be a year or two out until he's truly, fantasy relevant.
Not to talk about the playoffs too much because I know that, whatever. But Hedman's playoff performance was the best Hedman I think we've ever seen, and he's 30. Yeah. So he's still got a good amount of time left, I think. And I think he's going to have a great season just on his own right.
And defensemen do age a little bit later, or tend to have a little bit more.
Tell that to Kel McCarr and Quinn Hughes turning that.
I know, right? Jeez, man.
I mean, I feel
it used to be that the defenseman didn't, but
yeah, I feel like for like a defensive defenseman, that's still true. But I feel like, well, I mean, obviously we just have this recency bias because we saw
Brent Burns is staring at you as you're about to say what you're about to say.
Well, no, he's still, he has been and will always be great. Like all hail Brent Burns. But in the meantime, like we used to say, we needed to wait so long for an NHL defenseman to like really mature, and I guess that's just been challenged with Hughes and McCarr.
I mean,
and I'm trying to think of who's next in line to really challenge that thinking.
Don't even go so far. Chabot. We've got Darlene, who did great, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Darlene, too.
We've had great young defensemen come in and just do incredible. Speaking of it, someone who came in really young, let's move over to Florida because there were some really interesting things happen today on the power play. And just in general, there's some interesting things that are happening. So at 5-on-5, there's one person that's obviously extremely interesting, and that's Duclair, who continues to practice, and Quenneville went as far to say that Duclair will start with Barkov and Huberdeau. So Duclair is obviously the first one to talk about. Now, the second thing that's extremely interesting is it seems that perhaps Yandel has been bumped off the top power play. So today's power play was Barkov, Huberdeau, Duclair, Wenberg, and Ekblad. So does that all of a sudden, us Fantasy Hockey Podcast has always been firm Ekblad is boring camp. We've always been on that side. He is a vanilla player. It is the truth. But now is he not? Does he become more interesting?
One thing to add to this wasn't like a group deployment type thing. Coach Q said he liked Ekblad in power play 1.
Yes.
So it's not just like a random one-off. It's like a consideration, whether they go that way or not.
Yeah, and we seem to be pretty familiar now with Quenneville's disdain for Keith Yandel, the way he was treated and benched and taken off the top unit last season. And I mean, the timing couldn't be better for Ekblad, because last season, out of nowhere, all of a sudden he put up a 50-point pace when he'd never even quite hit a 40-point pace in his career so far. And it wasn't with power play time. It wasn't with a shooting percentage. He actually had the lowest shooting percentage of his career, fewest power play points of his career. So it's like, where is this coming from? It's coming from assists. Like, I don't know what Joel Quenneville taught Ekblad, but Ekblad led the league last season in primary assists per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Like, he was an animal, and his rate there was twice what it's ever been in his career before. And like, I've dug through Ekblad. I'm like, what was happening? And I think honestly, Quenneville had a system where I still don't know, but the system that Quenneville built really worked for Ekblad to be like one of the most frequent shot assisters, and those shots turned into goals often enough. One reason to think that he might not hit 50 points again is that his on-ice shooting percentage was above 10%, which is generally unsustainable. But then again, if you play with Barkov and Huberdeau, I'm not going to rule it out. And also, you put in those power play points if he does end up in that top deployment, and there you go. You've got like 55s. I'm actually like talking myself into Ekblad so much, and most of my drafts are over. I'm mad I didn't go for him in any leagues.
The thing is, like, this is not only just, okay, he'll get some power play time. Like, this Florida top power play, like Keith Yandel has been among the top of the league in power play points over the past few seasons. So if all of a sudden Ekblad gets to get in there, and yeah, Hoffman isn't there and Dadonov isn't there. Like, we're talking about like Wenberg and Duclair as two of the forwards in that power play. So not maybe as scary as it used to be, but still, if he was able to put up a 50-point pace last year with hardly any power play points, like Brian said, like maybe take off a few, maybe he like, whatever, some luck involved, but put him as a 40-point even strength guy, then you still add 20 power play point pace, and all of a sudden we're looking at a 60-point pace defenseman, which is huge. So he's definitely not boring to me. I love this. I was assuming that we're gonna have to wait for Yandel to get injured before Ekblad to ever break out,
which never happens.
Ever. Right? That was like a hell for freezing over kind of thing. But now all of a sudden, like, I think Ekblad, if you haven't drafted yet, bump him way up your draft list, because this is very exciting.
Also, to clarify, like, because you guys called him a vanilla player, and like I totally agree. I have been completely in step with you guys in saying like for years it's like, oh, Ekblad, like, high-end draft pick, he's just gonna step up and be an offensive wizard. It's like, no, that wasn't gonna happen. But now
now we've got to pay attention. It's kind of,
but
really
of course,
interesting.
with the caveat that these are preseason practice lines.
For sure.
Elon's gonna say that after every single line combo that we
only if we get too crazy.
I will say the most exciting thing, I mean, I actually think this Ekblad change is potentially very exciting, but I think Duclair makes a lot of sense, especially late, because he's still not being drafted especially high. He likes to shoot. And the thing that Florida lost, the biggest piece they lost, was a power play shooter.
Yeah.
So if they can find that in Duclair, that's great for him, and great for you if you draft him late and he, low risk play there.
Like top line, top power play with Barkov and Huberdeau.
Why
like
not,
you're not gonna hear me complaining about that pick.
Draft him in the 14th round. Come on. Maybe earlier now if people are paying attention, but
potentially
not much earlier still, because the floor is clearly low.
Yeah, I mean, he is on the top power play too, which is great. So let's move over to the Nashville Predators now, where honestly everything is pretty much status quo, except for the fact that Boryatsky is now on the team and they will hit a little bit more. But aside from that, the lines are honestly extremely similar. That top line is Philip Forsberg, Johansson, and Arvidsson. yeah, you've kind of got the same thing going on in Nashville. And quite frankly, I don't really like a lot of it. I think, Arvidsson is one guy that to me has fallen a lot. Do you guys believe in an Arvidsson bounce back?
I mean, like, he had success on a line with Forsberg and Johansson. So it's like, it seems like the recipe should be there. It's the exact same players. But at the same time, no, I guess so. A little bit of a bounce back. Like, obviously not like back to being like 35 plus goals, but I think that probably he should be getting drafted a little bit higher than he has been. I don't think he's like a 30-point guy like he was showing us last year. To me, like, Matt Duchene becomes like very concerning looking at these lines, by the way, playing with Turris and Granlund, like snoozer right there.
Yeah,
I'm
do
honestly
not
surprised he's still being drafted.
Yeah, we keep getting questions about Duchene.
In standard leagues anyway.
And so, yeah, I don't see the love for Duchene. I don't see it really working out for him or being good. So right now, the line I think that you're looking at, Elon, is a little bit old. I think that's from the playoffs. But right now they have Granlund, Duchene, and Kunin. It doesn't really get better though. So
did I say Turris?
It's still Turris. It still doesn't get any better there. Honestly, Granlund, Duchene, and Kunin is still not great.
Turris is on the Oilers now. So would you take, this is maybe an easy question then. I think I would take Arvidsson ahead of Duchene. Do you concur?
Oh yeah, all day. I'm taking, especially with the kind of, I don't know about you guys in your drafts, but so far we found the right wing to be pretty shallow this year and kind of really difficult to fill that right wing slot. And Arvidsson is one guy that just from a shots perspective alone, or upside in shots at least, like is someone that excites me quite a bit.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I feel like in the drafts I've been doing, I always wind up with straight jokers on my right wing. Like I'm like, what? Yeah. Like the rest of my draft is great, and then over here,
it's like, what have I done? How did I get here?
Right wing is
too much whiskey.
Is that one position this year that everyone is finding themselves suddenly unequipped to fill. So if you haven't done your draft yet, like I never actually like usually rosters are flexible enough that you don't need to really cover yourself beyond making sure you've got like two good serviceable players. But if you are concerned about position scarcity, I've seen right wings falling off faster, honestly, than even defensemen in my drafts this year. And Arvidsson is someone I'd take another chance on. Like so the thing with Nashville is their power play sucked again last year. Like only Roman Josi ever got points on it, which is just a head scratcher. And if you look at the way they deployed their forwards, 3 forwards saw more than 13 minutes at 5-on-5 a night. One was the most often played one was Mikael Granlund, who they seem to hate, but they played him the most, followed by Duchene. Forsberg just barely above 13 minutes a night. And I've made the case that Forsberg with like Mitch Marner minutes would put up maybe not quite Mitch Marner production, but like easily 75 points. But he's really stuck because he only sees 13 minutes a night. Victor Arvidsson actually lost 90 seconds a night last season at 5-on-5. And I say all this not because I have an explanation for it. It just doesn't make sense. So I don't know if they go back to like, what's that?
I honestly, and I said this on our own podcast, I think Arvidsson played all of last season hurt. I really do.
That seems to bear out in the fact that like he stopped shooting as much as not completely, but like he definitely shot maybe like 20% less with no apparent reason.
Yeah.
So that makes
I'm
sense.
still not like, I'm taking, I think the late round risk being as low as it is on Arvidsson, I think the upside is there. I assume at least the shots will come back. If they don't come back, if the shots don't come back, that's when I really get worried.
Yeah.
If he starts shooting like he was a couple seasons ago, then I mean the goal should be there eventually, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they all figure the power play out. I still think that Josi is going to lead the team in points. But I don't know. I would say it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is.
Okay. Another ranking question for you. Duclair or Arvidsson? Who do you take first?
Duclair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Duclair.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your answer?
I don't know. I'd probably go Arvidsson.
I feel like I would also take Arvidsson. I just want to be the first to say it. I wanted you to be. I'm just afraid that Duclair loses his spot.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think it depends where in the draft. If we're talking like my last pick, that is someone I'm streaming anyways, maybe I'll take Duclair for the upside. But
that's why I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. If it's someone that like I want to hold all season, then Arvidsson's likely sticking with Forsberg and Johansson.
Yeah. It's kind of been our
Duclair's ceiling is higher, but Arvidsson's probably more likely, but when I'm that deep, I'm probably just looking for the ceiling. Like if I have to drop a Duclair, I don't care. If I have to drop Arvidsson, probably I don't care unless I'm in a really deep draft.
at the points
What a
where
crazy
we've
thing to
had to
say.
decide.
Like we wouldn't have thought at all that we'd say that 2 years ago, right? When
No.
he was just like up and coming. Like 2 seasons ago, 68-point pace, 34 goals in
He was
58
so
games.
exciting.
Yeah.
Gosh. And everything just collapsed.
I have because you guys mentioned Borowiecki. So I floated this theory that he's not gonna be as good for hits this year because Nashville might have the puck more often than Ottawa did. And also maybe they play a system where like it's just not that valued for him to go around like hitting everything that moves. So like when he used to be the guy who could win you your week in that category, I'm curious to see if he'll still have that opportunity to hit as much.
Worried about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely worried. I've stayed away from Borowiecki as like, I've seen so many people pick draft for hits. If I'm drafting for hits this season, I'm going like a Ryan Reeves or I'm kind of staying away from Borowiecki just because, like you said, I think there's a lot of uncertainty into how his deployment will work. And on top of that, like, will he be able to hit as much? Will the system allow him to hit as much? I don't know if the answer is there. And so I'm not drafting him as for that because there's other options that, quite frankly, are much more stable than Borowiecki, in my opinion. Yeah. Okay, so let's move over now to the Dallas Stars. A little bit of weirdness there, but the Dallas Stars are weird in that no one's really that relevant. They're like the Arizona Coyotes. We talked about this on the Keeping Karlsson side of the show, but like a lot like the Arizona Coyotes. And, for people who have listened to the podcast, that we kind of say this about the Stars all the time, but their system just doesn't let people score goals. They don't like scoring goals, actually. Mm-hmm. They like playing defense, scoring one goal, sitting back and boring us all to death. If you watch soccer, you know that to me, the Dallas Stars remind me a lot of Jose Mourinho over at Tottenham and Chelsea and everywhere else he's been. Scores a goal and just sits back for 90 minutes and lets the team come at them. Anyways, that being said, the highest drafted player right now on the Dallas Stars is Jamie Benn at what's his ADP? Brandon, do you remember?
It's down there. It's like 100 something.
It's like 100 something, which is insane that that's the first time one of their forwards are going. So right now their lines are Ben, Hintz, and Gurianov. Their second line is Kiviranta, Pavelski, and Radulov.
I mean, I'm shocked that Kiviranta got that shot, so that's good for him
too.
If he hangs there. Not like shocked
no
enough
way
to draft
he's
him.
hanging there.
Yeah,
maybe he will. I don't know, but like I wouldn't want to draft him. I think, to be honest, the forwards are really boring, like you said.
Yes,
like
I
maybe
agree.
we can talk about is Radulov going to bounce back? Is Pavelski going to bounce back? I don't know. I think the interesting thing to me is actually John Klingberg is on the top power play last time I saw, and not Miro Heiskanen, and that's with Radulov, Pavelski, Ben, and Robertson, who's also like an interesting guy, Jason Robertson. So I feel like Klingberg's fallen like super deep in a lot of my drafts, and like Heiskanen like way above him. And I'm not saying that like Klingberg's going to be better than Heiskanen. I could see it being pretty even, just like in a lot of playoff pools last year. But like Klingberg might be one of those really good, like you wait a while and still get a top power play defenseman. Like it used to be a lot more exciting to have the top power play defenseman on Dallas, but still, this is a guy who, I have time for, especially if he's falling super deep. And the defensemen, that are also around are like a Matt Dumba or whatever. Then you could also get a John Klingberg.
They did split largely on the power play last year. So that's one thing I'm worried about, is that Klingberg might be there now, but if he starts to kind of falter a little bit, it's really easy for them to just swap Heiskanen in, right? And so, I mean, we've seen Klingberg go last round in our listener leagues. He's gone last round,
he's gone
undrafted.
He's gone undrafted.
Just wild. I mean, it's crazy to me.
We are doing full bangers cats leagues. So if Klingberg's not going to get points, he is way below replacement. So there is that. I mean, Yandel goes very late in those leagues as well.
And I mean, I'd bring up Hintz and Gurianov, but the thing with Hintz and Gurianov is they're on second power play. So I feel like their ceiling is already capped 5-on-5 because they don't really, the Stars don't do much there. And then they're also second power play. So, I mean, do we need to talk about Hintz and Gurianov? I don't really think so.
I'm good to move on.
I'm like,
okay,
Dallas makes me sleepy. I'm going to be honest. Like, I drafted Pavelski with the last pick overall in a draft because I got sniped on Dylan Strome in a league that I thought nobody would even know who he is. So shame on me. But what all this to say, I drafted Pavelski and like I immediately regretted it. It's like someone needs to score goals, except like you guys said, it's Dallas. No one needs to score goals.
Pavelski's shooting percentage just dropped. Like I remember last year we had for 3/4 of the season, everyone was asking us, is Pavelski going to turn it around? And the whole season I'd be like, no, this is who he is. He's shooting at 11%. It's not bad. This is just like, you're seeing who Joe Pavelski is when he's not on the Sharks. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's sad. It sucks, but Yeah.
His ice time dipped, and that was that. But look, I will say, okay, one Dallas Stars take, which we dropped on our last regular episode of the show, was our Schmore Goalies board, where we went through every single goalie and tried our best. I know it's impossible. We tried our best to project how the goalies will do next year and broke them into tiers. I think like Jake Ettinger is a really interesting guy right at the end of a draft, just because Hudobin has never been a full-time starter in the league. And I don't see, like, if Dallas has had so much success running a tandem, and obviously you could just say, oh, it's because they had Bishop and Hudobin, 2 great goalies. But I think it might just be that Hudobin's really awesome when he plays like 50% of the games. And so I think I could see them trying out Jake Ettinger. Maybe he can be similar to what Bishop's been doing, just because it's like a great system. Like, I'm not saying that Ettinger's like right now as like a prospect, like better than Ben Bishop. Like, I'm not crazy, but I do see that as a really great system. And if you're going to get a goalie that's playing a decent number of games, that's a guy to watch. Like, him and Klingberg are the guys I'm looking at really late in my draft if I'm thinking about Dallas at all.
Yeah, Ettinger is interesting. I think it's a system thing. I do agree with that. I think that Dallas has a system that allows goalies to flourish. I would love to see that tested with Ettinger, but I do believe that that is the case as well, that there is a system there that would allow him to do well. Now, I'm sorry, Brian, that you're sleepy, because you know who the last team in the Central is, and it's going to make you sleepier, maybe, then that's the Detroit Red Wings.
No, I'm wide awake for this.
There's 2 teams left. We have Chicago as well.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll talk about Chicago a little bit. But there's one person. Okay, so on you like Kubalik more than anybody else on the planet, I think. But
I'll see your Kubalik and raise you Pius Suter for Chicago hype train in this episode.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're skipping Chicago then. I can't hear this blasphemy. Let's skip staying on Detroit here. So the lines here are Zadina, Fabry, and Ryan on the second. I skipped the top line. The top line is Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Mantha. Makes total sense. And honestly, aside from those 2 lines, there's really not much else. And then Philip Hronek is the only interesting defenseman, really. Maybe Cholowski if he gets that top power play. I would expect Hronek to get it. But I think really the thing to talk about here is obviously Mantha being a sleeper, I think. Yeah. That's an obvious one. Larkin, I think, is largely a sleeper as well. There can be a discussion on Tyler Bertuzzi, but Brandon might kill me if I initiate that because he knows I kind of like Tyler Bertuzzi.
May I?
Yes, please.
I'll say a small thing about Bertuzzi. Like, his numbers last year weren't as high as like a lot of people were hoping for being on the top line. I think a big thing to remember is Mantha being hurt. Like, this is not a deep team, right? Mantha being hurt killed like Larkin a little bit and like really killed Tyler Bertuzzi. And I just feel like if they could have a full healthy season as the top line, and like Bertuzzi's there on the top line and top power play with Larkin and Mantha, I feel like Bertuzzi becomes more than just a replacement guy. I think he could be like a bit better. I'm not saying he's going to like have a huge breakup, but I could see him being like a 55-ish, maybe approaching 60-point guy if things all break right. But that does require Mantha to stay healthy for a year, which I'd love to see because he seems like he's so good. He just has gotten hurt the last couple seasons.
Butt goals. There could be some butt goals for Tyler Bertuzzi. There you go. If you have to listen to the Keeping Karlsson side of the podcast, we talk about butt goals.
It's in the home of Thomas Holmstrom, one of the originators of the modern butt goal.
Yes, we should do a whole episode one day. Come together in the offseason, talk about the history of the butt goal and that position. There's nothing really, I think, on the second line either. Bobby Ryan, Philip Zadina. Zadina is the only one that could maybe be interesting, but I don't see why he'd go to that top line, personally. I think Bertuzzi fills a role. Am I wrong there, I think?
No, I think so. Unless, like, we saw Detroit try all kinds of things in the time that Mantha was healthy. At least, like, Mantha was separated from Larkin. Bertuzzi was separated from Larkin. Zadina did get time with, last year he played the most, oddly, with 2 different centermen. I guess he just didn't have a constant wing, but he played the most with Phil Pula and Dylan Larkin. Was playing with Larkin and Bertuzzi before he got injured, after Mantha got injured, whose spot he had taken. But Zadina looked really good when he did get that little bit of sunlight in his deployment. 6 points in 9 games. He had a nice little run there before he got injured and his season ended. I took him as my very last pick, like 251st overall. And I don't feel bad about it. Like, he'll be a quick drop. I agree with you guys. Like, there isn't a whole lot of room for opportunity, but I don't think Bertuzzi or Mantha are necessarily locked in next to Larkin. And so I think that could give Zadina some opportunity. Plus, who else is going to be the 4th forward on that power play?
Yeah, that is true.
That's a good point.
I mean, there is something there, especially in a points league. I think as a late round flyer, I don't hate the idea of the upside there in Zadina. And I think especially with how much
250.
Yeah. I mean, that's like I said, towards the very end as a flyer on someone that you could possibly drop. Like, yeah, it makes sense.
Maybe like Zadina's the kind of guy also just like if Mantha gets hurt yet again, then you're jumping on Zadina right away.
Exactly. He's the guy who would fill in pretty much immediately. He is like Mantha light, I feel like, without the shots and such, but with the type of shot that Mantha would provide. Okay, now we can go to Chicago, who I unfortunately kind of forgot about for a second here. So the lines in Chicago right now pretty much seem to be, so let me pull it up on Daily Faceoff because it seems like the actual, look, the top line is going to be Dylan Strome, Patrick Kane, and Alex DeBrincat.
Probably DeBrincat.
DeBrincat is what it seems like at this point.
Doesn't have to be, but most likely.
It doesn't have to be. If it were Brandon's way, it wouldn't be DeBrincat. It would be Kubalik.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I would have figured Kubalik would slide in on this.
You think?
Yeah.
He has to get top power play, I would think.
Yeah.
Who else is going there?
Kubalik? Yeah, Kubalik right now is slated on the top power play with Dylan Strome, Patrick Kane, DeBrincat, and Duncan Keith. So that's
Dylan Strome is clearly the benefactor here of
100%.
Whatever.
My issue with Strome is just Strome, I like him in a points league, not as much in a Cats league, especially Bangers league, because he doesn't really do anything except get points, is what it seems like thus far. So that's my take on Dylan Strome. I want to hear the take on Pius Suter because I haven't even given him like a second of thought, to be honest.
Well, he was great in Europe, right? He's put up great numbers even this season. Now, all of a sudden, with Jonathan Taves injured, he's centering the second line with Kubalik. Like, I just feel like he's getting this great opportunity. Again, this is like where we're considering to draft Zadina. I would also consider a Pius Suter. But I will say, one thing I do want to say is I've been poo-pooing DeBrincat all summer long, being like, he's he's a really great talent and he could be awesome. He had that amazing second season, but like he's been pushed off the top power play because Doc got a spot on there and Jonathan Taves has a spot. All of a sudden, forget everything I said, because now DeBrincat is going to get the opportunity that he wasn't seeing last year just because of these unfortunate injuries. So all of a sudden now, if we're having like DeBrincat playing with Patrick Kane at even strength and also on the power play, he's like the guy where like Dylan Strome is like, sure, that'll be nice, but I'm not expecting like I think like DeBrincat can have like a huge breakout, go back to like what he did in his first season, like getting like 75 plus points if he's sticking with Patrick Kane all season on even strength and the power play.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the other one that's going to be interesting when he comes back is Kirby Doc.
Yeah, when. But yeah,
when.
Right. Feel like the last I saw was that like he's done for the season.
Is he done for the season?
That's what I thought I saw.
It looked brutal, but like, yeah, it didn't look good, but I just didn't know if it was okay. It sounds bad. Never mind. Ignore my Kirby Doc take. Well, so yeah. I agree with DeBrincat. I think before you go for 10 minutes on Kubalik, give me a second.
I'm just gonna say the word Duncan Keith.
Oh, okay. You know what? Actually, we've talked about it. Go to Duncan Keith.
He was.
Are we just gonna let it sit
there at all about Duncan Keith?
No, well, a little.
I'll care a little because I don't know that Adam Boqvist is ready to quarterback a top unit, especially when there's like going to be a lot of heavy lifting to do. I feel like Duncan Keith, just as like the elder statesman, is there for at least the start of the season. I could see a transition happening at some point, but remember how many different people Chicago tried on the in that PP1 QB spot all season long, and then Duncan Keith was the only one who actually did anything with it. So I think it's going to be Boqvist before long. I just don't know that this year yet. And this goes back to talking about young defensemen. He seems like a young defenseman. He doesn't seem like a Dahlin or Makar or Hughes who's ready to just go nuts right away. Needs some time to grow. So Boqvist is another late round flyer, which I feel like Chicago is full of this year.
Seems like
that's where I'm at on him.
Yeah, I just feel like with Boqvist, he did get a shot on the top power play last year also. So I just think this is going to be the kind of thing that probably swaps around a bit, which decreases my interest in Duncan Keith because he's not someone to hold. But if he's there at the start of the season, I'll ride him. And if he's doing something, I'll hold on. But I would drop him. And I am expecting Boqvist to get some shots on the top power play this year. It's just a matter of when he gets those shots, is he going to do something to capitalize and hold it?
Yep, that's pretty much my take on it.
I do like Duncan Keith versus the outlook on him, I guess.
Yeah.
Compared to public opinion, I think he's better than public opinion for this, at least the beginning of the season.
It's true.
He's going to have power play exposure to Patrick Kane, full stop, right? There's something there.
I'll be honest, I haven't even thought of him until you mentioned him right now. So I think that proves the point that now I'm like, oh yeah, is he even on my like spreadsheets as one of the ranked defensemen
too?
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. He's nothing special, but like I wouldn't, if he's filling in my fourth defenseman position, like, or fifth or even whatever.
Yeah.
You could do worse.
If he's like your first bench guy, I think that's where Duncan Keith probably fits in. Like he's also old, so I'm worried. He's played a lot of games. Like he's barely missed time in most of the last 7, 8, like actually ever really. He missed a handful of games last season, but aside from that, and one other season, 15-16, he's been like just on the ice almost all the time. But this is his age 37 season, and he's not a guy who seems to have aged so gracefully. Like it seems like he still can eat big minutes, but he can't quite do the same things offensively that he once could. Like unlike someone like Mark Giordano. So yeah. So I'm a little like I'm wary, but I would definitely draft him as a power play quarterback option very late in my draft.
I mean, you start seeing the guys that are near him that deep, and there's nobody else that gets really any realistic power play exposure that deep. There's nobody.
Yeah.
Even in Cats leagues, it's like a wasteland.
I'm trying to see.
Connor Murphy, Cats league. People forgetting about him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I did like him last year a lot. He was pretty good. Okay, so that's enough of Chicago. Let's go over to the Eastern Division, the Mass Mutual NHL East Division.
Finally.
By the way, the Mass Mutual.
We need to start over. We need to re-record every division.
We just did the Discover NHL Central Division. We get none of the money from the sponsor, so I'm not saying that ever again. Oops, almost moved my mic. So let's start off in Boston, where honestly, it's actually kind of easy, I feel like, to talk about. I think the defense is the most interesting thing to talk about, obviously, with some of the changes that are happening there. The top line is, I don't know if I'm that excited about Studnicka. It's Marchand, Bergeron, and Studnicka. I don't know exactly how to say it, but that top line, I'm not that interested. And then we've got a second line of DeBrusk, Krejci, and Kasha.
Yeah, I'll yield my time. I'll yield my time and let Brian just talk about how much he loves Andre Kasha for the rest of the podcast.
Okay. I haven't thought about it for a second.
I love Andre Kasha. I mean, okay. I once upon a time loved Andre Kasha when he was just like he looked the same way that Vrana looked, that Bjorkstrand looked. I'm trying to think of another name, but like these guys. Timo Meier, Victor Arvidsson, like Andre Kasha had that same profile, except the difference between him and them is he got injured a whole bunch of times between, him coming up and then him getting an opportunity, which still has not really ever happened because these injuries have interrupted those opportunities. He's been a huge shot volume guy, came into the league in his second year in the season, was taking almost 3 shots a night. Took more than 3 shots a night the next season. So and that's just been a theme for him since. I was really disappointed when he went to Boston and his ice time dropped and they didn't use him. And now I just feel like, hey, he's from the same country as David Pastrnak and Pasternak's injured. So he should just take Pasternak's spot. It's just that easy. And he's a big shooter like Pastrnak is. I mean, I don't know how many other real parallels I can draw between their games other than how often they shoot the puck and their country of origin. But I still have faith that if given the opportunity, Kasha might turn it into something. He was a very late pick for me in one of my drafts. And I'm very ready to drop him. I'm not overly committed to him, but I don't know who this Studnicka guy is. I'm going to be honest. So I really don't know how to stake out the competition here. I just think that there's a decent shot that Kasha gets a shot to be on the top line and or the top power play to start the season and might actually be able to do something with it if he is entirely healthy and can stay that way.
So first of all, I totally disagree. And second of all, I think you missed out on the perfect joke because when you were saying what are things that they have in common, Kasha and Pastrnak, you left with the fact that both of their names sound like foods.
Food. Yeah.
Come on.
And with Studnicka, he's a stud. Come on.
It's easy.
It's easy. Yeah. It's easy.
Can I do one brag on Boston? I called it as soon as the news came out about how Pasternak's having surgery, and this is like recorded on our podcast, this is like in the ether for everyone, I said, I'll bet you he's going to come back faster than his timeline is, because he's just a beast. Like, I had my reasons, but it's like Pasternak, because he's been injured before and has beaten the timelines. And I feel like there's something about these like elite players. Like, I think McDavid's beaten a timeline. Like, the superstars, unless like the doctors are saying it's not going to happen, you know, like obviously with Kucherov right now, like he's had this surgery and whatever, but like I just felt like Pasternak's probably going to beat it. And now news just came out earlier this week that Pasternak's potentially ahead of schedule. So now we're looking at maybe beginning of February, which might only be a couple of weeks, which means anyone who's gotten him in like the second round of a fantasy league as like, yeah. And this, we're talking about a guy who's like probably top 5 in most formats. And you got him as such a steal really deep.
Just insane. I mean, I think Pasta is one of the biggest sleepers of the season. Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So
it was weird that his ADP was in the 30s when even knowing that his slated timeline was mid-February. Like, who cares? You lose a month from the like one of the best players you can possibly get, you'll live.
Right. Just survive those first like 3 weeks.
We got
we
him,
have to
right?
talk about Charlie McAvoy and Grizzlick though.
That's the what? Yes, that is the point of contention here that we must talk about is what's going on with Grizzlick and McAvoy, and what are you doing?
So I'll go first, I guess. Like, I really cannot foresee Grizzlick holding power play 1 all season. Like, I guess it's possible, and like obviously he's getting the first crack there. That's what everyone said, and like I think they're going to give it the old college try. But like I think Charlie McAvoy should get a shot at some point. Like, obviously if the power play like just takes off and is awesome all year, then great, and Grizzlick becomes like a great stud. And he's another guy I'm not letting go undrafted, right? Because that upside is there. But I'm also not reaching for him. Like, I think I've seen in some drafts him going like super high, and this is a guy like one tweet saying like, oh, Charlie McAvoy's been practicing on the top power play today, and all of a sudden Grizzlick goes to having like 0 fantasy value. Like, before even playing a game, it's like his value goes to 0. So it's like I'm not super excited about him, aside from someone if I could get him in the last pick or like stream him in. But I think McAvoy then becomes also like a really good value pick, because I think there is like, first of all, he's great at even strength anyways, so he gives you value even if he never gets on that top power play. But if he does, we're talking about another Ekblad situation, right? Where like he's already been so good at even strength. Now what does he do if he's quarterbacking this amazing Boston top power play? And we just saw that Ekblad got his shot, and I wouldn't be surprised to see McAvoy also get his shot.
Yeah,
I legitimately could see. I said this on our podcast. If McAvoy plays the entire season on top power play, which is still possible, I don't know. It seems like they're probably going to start with Grizzlick as they have before. But if McAvoy played the entire season on the top power play in Banger Cats leagues, I think that McAvoy could be a top 5 defenseman this season for fantasy.
Nice.
Like, Pim's hits, the shots would come up because of more time on ice, if anything. And that power play is so deadly, it probably doesn't really matter too much who's behind it. Like, just pass it to anybody in front of you, and the puck's likely to go in.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not to take anything away from Torrey Krug, because as you guys mentioned on our half of the episode, like I think he's a top end power play quarterback, and he's never quite gotten the respect he deserves just because of all the guys who are on the power play with him, and they're just so dominant. And so how much can he really do? But now I guess we're going to see just how valuable he is. And I don't know that Matt Grizzlick can replace him. Charlie, like, I like what you said that like he could be a top 5 guy for bangers and hits. I just want him to start shooting more. Yeah. Like, he's been like a shot and a half per game kind of guy. Of course, the power play time could change that. And Krug was a huge shooter. So we'll see if any Boston Bruin, because like Grizzlick in his limited opportunity also has never really been a big shooter too. So like, do all of Krug's blue line shots just disappear, or does someone take on that role now?
I think I think that's a great argument to expect McAvoy to maybe be better for peripherals than we're expecting. Because it's a good point. Like, someone like they're not going to change their whole system, so maybe they just tell him shoot a bit more now instead of letting Krug do it. It's possible. Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Likely. Brian, in our joint league, the one we're doing together, this like cancer fighting league
with fantasy hockey trades with that Brandon and Gamby are also in.
Yeah.
In a different division.
I'm the worst at doing shout outs, but it's been a really fun draft. But anyways, we got Pasta in like round 2. We got McAvoy in like round like 15 or 14. I'm loving our team. We also have Bergeron, who we got super late in like round 7. So we're going to win this league.
Austin went 3rd in our league. Not third overall, 3rd round.
Oh my God.
Oh.
But I think that's because I may have had something to do with this. Everybody realized how valuable
absolutely had
goalies are in that
something to do with
league, and we were just the goalies took off the board so fast.
Didn't you take 2 goalies in the first 2
I
rounds?
thought about it. I didn't. Only because somebody took Hellebuck in
forget
front
what
of
you
me. I
did.
may have had they not done that.
Honestly, I feel like even if goalies are super valuable, it doesn't change the fact that they're hard to predict. So why reach for 2 starters that you think are like the 2 best when it might turn out that the middle tier starters turn out to be better? Like Brian and I grabbed Markstrom and I think like the 4th or 5th round, and then we got Koskinen and like whatever. And like now you might be like, oh yeah, well Markstrom and Koskinen, they're not as good as Leonard and Carey Price or whatever 2 like higher end goalies you want to throw out there. But I feel like every year we say that. Like last year, like Bobrovsky, who I know you were really high on, like, you know, like you always assume a goalie is going to be so awesome, and then they turn out, well, not always, obviously, but like I'm saying, it's like it's a bit of a more of a coin flip with goalies and with skaters. So for me, even if goalies are like the most valuable, if it was like a save is worth 1,000 points, I would still probably wait on goalies as long as I could get 2 starters that I think are okay. Then I feel like probably I have a similar
I just wanted
chance as
volume. I wanted to
Yeah.
get the most volume that I thought would be likely to be held.
That's fair.
So I basically targeted starting goalies with bad backups or unknowable backups or whatever.
Bennington, Gibson. Who did you take Gibson?
I have Bennington, Gibson, and Hart.
I'm tempted to like, I have a strategy plan for this league, but I feel like I almost don't want to say it because maybe people who we're competing against are listening. But I'll just say it that like in this league, there's only 3 goalie spots allowed. Like there's like a huge bench. Like we have like an 11-person bench.
I didn't realize that until afterwards.
Oh yeah, so it's a crazy big bench, but you're only allowed max 3 goalies, which means there's going to be a lot of backup goalies like available in free agency at all time, and there's 4 moves per week. And I feel like the skaters are going to be super dry in free agency because we're going so deep that it's going to be like boring guys. So I feel like I'm going to want to be using all 4 of my moves most weeks to just stream a different goalie every day in my 3rd goalie spot to get backup goalie starts, which means that I have no interest in drafting a 3rd goalie like high in the draft. I'll just like take whatever.
Had I known that we can only draft 3 goalies when I started drafting, I probably would have done something similar, but
well, just to rein this back in for a second, I want to go on the record to say that I have never made a claim about a goaltender being good and them not being good, especially in the case of Sergei Bobrovsky. He was amazing. His numbers just didn't back it up. Okay. That's the truth. Okay. Let's move on to the Buffalo Sabres. Interesting top line in Hall, Eichel, and Olofsson. Pretty different with a good potential guy in Olofsson and a known commodity in Hall who could have another amazing season potentially under his belt. And then we've got the defense of Dahlin, who I think is a little bit underrated. He's going right around value, but maybe a little bit underrated. Given the addition of Hall, I think makes a huge difference of what can happen on that power play. But of course, I think the big thing to talk about aside from Hall is Olofsson and what we see from him if he keeps that top spot.
Okay.
I guess I guess the agreement between us, Elon, is that I go first here. So yeah, I like again. So we're talking about Olofsson and where there's room for him to go. Like I could see a lot. Part of me could see a lot of shuffling in Buffalo, and part of me could see none. Like I read a quote because I drafted Reinhart in a league recently, and I was, like, oh, could Reinhart somehow end up on the top line? But Eric Stahl is busy talking up his shot. And he's like, I want Reinhart to use his shot more. So when we play together, and that just makes me feel like they're getting to know each other and they are going to stick together. I also think Skinner's done on the top line. If he got no play there last year, even with how badly things were going for him, I don't see it happening this year. So I feel like Olofsson's position on the top line is safe. I think where it's not safe would be on the power play. I just don't know exactly what his opportunity is going to be there this year. Last year, he had 17 power play points, seeing a 65% share of the power play time. And I'm just like between Reinhart and Hall and Eichel. And I don't know, maybe I just answered my own question. I guess he's like a Stahl, Skinner, Olofsson could be the 4th guy. It's probably going to be Olofsson. What am I? Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think of something interesting to say. And
I guess I could have gone. One thing with Olofsson though on that power plays, I do feel like last year especially he played that kind of more shooting slot, like kind of the Ovi-ish spot, just for his handedness on that top power play last year. But I don't think he can do that this year with Hall there. So I'd agree with you that I don't know what spot he plays this year on that top power play. Like what role does he serve on that top power play? Maybe I'm wrong there, but I feel like he's better served on the second.
It makes sense. Like, yeah, like that could be Hall's job. Also, this first
Yeah.
line is weird to me because Hall, Eichel, and Olofsson are all big shooters, but they can't all just shoot all the time. Like Eichel's one of these centers that actually has like a really high number of shots on goal. Like, so someone's gonna have to change their game, I guess, somewhat if this line sticks together. So I wonder if it'll last, and if it does, I wonder who's the one who all of a sudden stops taking shots. I'd imagine it should be Olofsson, right? Because what kind of crazy
You'd
person
think.
would you have to be like, you know what, Eichel and Hall, sit back, let me take care of this. Like, I don't think that's gonna happen.
That's kind of a scary thing to play against, though, when you've got 3 shooters playing against you, and any one of them could take a shot at any moment. And I'd say Eichel is a pretty good playmaker as well. I think the question, and I think you're right in this, is like, which one of Hall or Olofsson can convert to being a good playmaker in the case of, say, Hall taking more shots or Olofsson taking more shots? Like, can we see Hall transition into, which I think if anyone, it's Hall that could transition into more of a playmaker alongside Eichel to feed things to Olofsson. But I think that top line is killer. Like, I'm absolutely buying into Olofsson just from an even strength standpoint at the end of the draft. I mean, here's a good ranking question. We've been doing some ranking questions on both pods. Duclair or Olofsson?
Oh, I'll go Olofsson.
Yeah, I was gonna say Olofsson without even thinking too hard.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Olofsson for me too.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Olofsson doesn't have secured top power play, and yet, like,
I think a comparison, if I were going to make one, would be Olofsson and Fiala.
I mean, I don't really like Fiala at all.
I would take
Duclair over Fiala.
What?
I don't like Fiala. I don't like
wow.
Fiala. I don't like Fiala.
That's
I don't like him.
scorching.
I know, that's a scorching take right there. I don't like Fiala this year. I'm kind of fading him, honestly.
I mean,
I'm not.
I can understand fading him a little bit, but I would still take him over Olofsson and definitely over Duclair. I mean,
he doesn't have
like
a
Duclair also,
centerman. That sucks. But Duclair might
He's
not
amazing.
the second that he's off the first line.
That's true. I mean, I think to me, it's like where Fiala's going versus like Duclair and Olofsson. I feel like Fiala is just much more of a risk than these guys. Like, Fiala's going in a spot where I feel like he could still get a pretty good guy that's a little bit more secure, I guess, than someone who doesn't have a center on even strength or the power play. Literally, a center doesn't exist on his power play.
To me, Olofsson and Fiala are quite close. I think what we saw from Fiala is half a season of playing very well.
Yeah.
So, and what we've seen from Olofsson is about the same. We've seen a little bit more than a season of playing pretty well.
I was so convinced, though, by what I saw from Fiala last season. Like, I was ready to be like, there's no way he keeps this up. But there was nothing. Like, I combed through everything I usually comb through. I saw no.
We had him like a couple. We bought in.
Yeah.
But
you're not buying in for a second year.
I'm not buying in. I'm just saying I'm comparing him into Olofsson, and I see his line mates. Like, he's in a much more secure place
for sure
than Fiala.
See, this is what Brandon does every time.
He could lose a spot. Yes, he could.
This is Brandon distancing himself from my hot takes. This is exactly what this is. He is not. Him in the podcast do not endorse what I say.
Conversation.
I only get to intro teams, and that's it. I don't get to introduce takes. I had one shot and I blew it.
Also one quick thing about Olofsson, then I guess we should move on. But like last year, I felt like he started super strong and he was getting all those power play points. I don't think he was ever really doing much at even strength. And then also it seemed like at some point teams were kind of figuring out how to stop him on the power play, and he wasn't as effective. So
I agree.
I just feel like Fiala's like just such a better player that I don't even care if he was playing with nobodies. I'd still like take him just because I'm going to buy in the talent than Olofsson. I'm not saying Olofsson's not talented, but I just feel like there's at such a different level.
We got to write this one down. Who winds up in the points at the end of the season?
Yeah,
I think it'll be close. I think they'll be within 5 points of each other at the end of the season.
I'm ready to bet. Let's get our wallets out here. But no, okay.
I agree that everybody figured them out, but I also think it's because of the pieces that were around him. Like, I think you had Hall, and it just becomes way more dynamic now with power play. So even Stahl, I mean, I don't know if Stahl's gonna be on top power play. I would assume probably makes sense as center. No, well, you have Eichel, unless he plays the bumper. I don't know, but regardless, I think it just becomes a much more dynamic power play and even a dynamic line of 5-on-5. So I guess we'll see. Okay, let's move on to the next team here. And actually, this team, I just straight up have to ask if you like anybody, and that's the Devils. Like, is there a single person outside of Blackwood? I think Blackwood's kind of interesting. Is there anybody else that you like?
Yeah.
Aside from Palmieri. Palmieri's the other one that I guess I like.
Palmieri is like the most boring, but frustratingly likable. Like, it's just like, okay, fine. We're at the point in my draft where I'm just going to go for the guy who's a guarantee. And now that I said that, he won't be. But it's like, so I own him on 2 teams. And I hate it. I don't like it. Just like I just know there's going to be no excitement from him.
He's always borderline droppable, but just good enough to stay on your team because he's so consistent.
Yeah.
And like you don't want him on your team, and he's just so frustrating.
I mean, yeah, they don't have any like super high end guys, but I would probably want to have like Hischier, Gusev, and Palmieri. I think that's exciting. Like, I'm curious to see what Jack Hughes can do. Like, I think this team is actually like pretty solid overall. Like in terms
Wait
of
a minute.
Like, I don't think they're going to be like a a sure playoff team, but I think they like have rounded things out pretty well. I like how they got Andreas Janssen. Like, I guess I really like how they got Corey Crawford. Like, I guess this isn't really as much fantasy related. I just feel like they might not be like as bad as last year. I guess also I am kind of hoping this one I'm ready for you to say, wait a minute for. Okay. But like, I'm kind of hoping like PK Subban could not be completely
I'm
done.
not gonna say wait a minute about that. I don't know. Maybe.
It looks like he's getting another shot on the top power play. I saw a recent tweet. Subban, Hughes, Gusev, Palmieri, Zaka, and don't forget Hischier is injured right now. But I assume Hischier's not bumping Subban. He's probably bumping like Zaka, if anybody. So I think that like that could be good. Like Subban's someone I would draft. I'd actually be curious to know. Did we talk about Dumba? I'm really thinking of Subban and Dumba as like the same kind of situation. Like people who have been really good, then last year really disappointed us, and now we go into this season. It looks like they're back on the top power play. And now it's just like, can they get a glimmer of what they were doing like a few years ago? Well, Dumba's case just a couple years ago.
I would take Dumba over Subban. I think.
Same for sure.
Especially in
I
cats
agree
leagues,
that
because Dumba actually like does put up pretty good cats.
Yeah. I think to me, the way I see the Devils is they're actually a decent option in points leagues. I don't like them in cats leagues. Like Hughes, for example, just not great in cats. Gusev also nothing. Just
we're gonna
not
have to move
great
on just from awful takes from all around here.
I know it's
forget the Devils.
All right, let's go on.
Forget it. You know what? Let's move on to another boring team.
Wait, did we not talk about Hischier?
We did not yet.
Okay.
We can talk about Hischier though.
I'm just gonna throw in Hischier.
I'll give you 30 seconds on Hischier. Let me put a timer on real quick, and you get
that's actually
30 seconds.
That's a good amount of Hischier time.
I don't even need 30 seconds. I'm just gonna remind everyone that he's a first overall pick who like still has a lot of upside. Last year it was super weird with him like sharing time both on top line and top power play with Jack Hughes. Still managed a 51-point pace even with only 10 power play points, and that was a downgrade from the season prior where he had a 56-point pace and was on pace for actually fewer power play points. So Nico, all I'm saying is don't forget him. He just turned 22 years old a couple days ago. Happy belated birthday. But like with Jack Hughes in the lineup, I know there's limited space for both of them to coexist, but I wouldn't write off either one for sort of surprising and making an impact this year.
One thing we haven't, I would love not to talk about Jersey anymore, but one thing that we haven't really discussed a whole lot is the division itself. Who is Jersey scoring against? Buffalo, Rangers, Pittsburgh, maybe sometimes.
And the Rangers don't give up that many goals, just like 3 a game.
What about Washington?
Yeah, but I'm saying like the option, like the majority of their games are going to be tough to score in.
I don't know
if you like them against the field, their field sucks to play.
I don't know,
against.
Brandon. I agree with you that it's going to be tough for them to win a lot of games, but I think they're scoring. Like, yeah, they're going to have trouble against the Islanders. Aside from that, like
Boston.
Oh yeah, and Boston. Yeah, they're even though Boston's
Philly?
like changed.
Like Philly,
Boston's weird.
Do we know if
Even
like
Washington.
non-Chara, like Krug, like they've lost 2 of their big defensemen? So I wonder.
Like I guess Philly has Carter Hart, but Pittsburgh is defensively suspect. Washington, like I mean, everyone's gonna shout at me that Ilya Samsonov is a legit like top-notch #1 goalie. We're not there yet, but like
wait. Do we agree on this? Oh, we're jumping to Washington next.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's forget about New Jersey. Let's go to Washington.
Forget about it. Let's go to Washington. I'm excited about this take. Okay, hold on. We need to start with Samsonov because I feel like I'm the only person in the world that has been like, why are we all acting like Samsonov is a top goalie starter? Aside from wins, ignoring wins, like looking at save percentage of goals against average, I just don't understand the like excitement about Samsonov. Like if you look at the danger levels of when any Washington goaltender is in net, they're not very good at suppressing shots. Like they tend to kind of play, I think, very offensive and thus not being that great defensively for their goaltenders and letting in higher danger scoring chances. So I don't know if I buy this. I buy the wins for Samsonov, but when it comes to everything else, I'm kind of like, it's been a few years now since we've had a really great Washington goaltending year. And I just don't get the hype all of a sudden. When Samsonov wasn't incredible last year, he wasn't. And now he has to start without a decent backup. I don't know. What is your guys' take on Samsonov?
I'm happy to go.
Yeah. Elon, well, you're going to get two different takes depending on who goes first. I already sort of just gave mine, so I'll just recap it for 10 seconds and throw to Elon. Everybody's making this huge assumption. I think it's a huge assumption that suddenly he's going to come in and be a legit number one. Like, yeah, he had a pretty good run last year. He definitely caught fire for a little bit. But I just, like, I'm not saying he can't be great. I'm just saying I haven't seen anything to, like, just be automatically bought into. Elon, you have, though.
I mean, he has played more than the 26 games he played last year. Like, he had a whole career in the KHL where he put up amazing numbers. And I know anytime I say that, then Brian brings up random goalies who have also done well in the KHL to try to like make it seem as if like it doesn't matter if you do well in the KHL. But like Samsonov is like a very highly heralded prospect. Like everyone says he's going to be really great. Like the prospect experts that actually have watched his like scouting, like, you know, like we're just people who like look at spreadsheets, right? Like some people have actually watched his games in Europe and saw him be super successful. Now he comes into a situation where he's the for sure number one goalie. Like it's like Craig Anderson and Vanacek, I think is the name of the other guy that might have a chance at playing games for Washington. So he's going to play a lot. Like maybe he won't have like the most sparkling save percentage, but I don't think you could totally blame Washington for Holtby kind of falling apart the last couple of years. I think also Holtby has maybe fallen off a little bit. And this will be a very interesting year to see, of course, how does Holtby do in a different system? And also if Samsonov can live up to the hype. And like, I definitely agree with you that I'm not like reaching for him, but I also have said I'm not reaching for any goalies. Like we did our Schmore goalies board. I would have put him in tier 2. Brian put him in tier 3 and I acquiesced. But if I could get him like as the 10th or 11th goalie drafted, I'd be like happy with that because he's a starting goalie with a great pedigree. So I don't know. I don't hate him as much as you. That's for sure.
Interesting. Brandon, do you want to add anything?
Well, sorry, Brandon, I will let you talk, but I just like Elon. I don't hate
smiles.
him. I do not hate Samsonov. That's not what I'm saying. So I just want to clarify that. Sometimes when I'm not as enthusiastic about someone as Elon is, then I hate him. It's really you
know what? I'll hate him with you, Brian. It's okay. We can hate him.
No, right. I don't hate him. You're hating him alone.
I think the whole thing with him is not necessarily how well he'll play. It's where he's being considered relative to who's going around him, right? Yeah. Like he's being taken in areas where you could get, you know, a Markstrom or a Binnington or a lot of other like seemingly safer bets. And I think that's what gives me pause.
Okay,
like
I think we're on the same page, to be honest. Like I would have Vasilevsky,
I think
like
we're all
Anderson, Leonard, Hart, Binnington, Hellebuck, Markstrom.
I don't know
like
why,
Gibson,
but when you said Anderson, I thought Craig Anderson, and I was like, what the hell is he
no. Craig Anderson will all put a little bit behind Samsonov. But yeah, I feel like all those guys I named, I'd probably take over Samsonov, but I would take Samsonov still ahead of like
Anderson's an interesting one because I don't know, man, that North Division.
Yeah,
there's gonna be goals scored.
Right.
I think.
I can't wait till that division's the lowest scoring, and everyone.
I do like that you said you got
scratching
their
their heads.
I would bet any amount of money against that being the case. Anything. But
is there anything else on Washington? Do they have skaters?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Vrana, but you know, I kind of want to just jump to the Rangers really quick because they have a very similar story in that. A Russian goaltender that's coming over his first season, also being highly touted and drafted very high.
The next team we're going
Igor
to after this as well.
So I know exactly where we're going after this because there's another young Russian goaltender in the same division that is important to talk about. So let's talk about Igor Shesterkin. I think that it's a little bit different because of the system in place and the goaltending coaching situation. It's like any goaltender that comes through the Ranger system is just godly. I don't know what is in the water there or what Benoit Allaire feeds them, but it's insane. So I trust Igor Shesterkin. I don't trust the Rangers.
New York City tap water right here. Delicious.
There, that's what it is. It's what gives the bread such tasty flavor. But I don't know. I think he's definitely not worth the ADP he's at. I think the ADP is too high for Igor Shesterkin, but I do think he's going to face a ton of shots. I think in a volumes league, he's much more worth it than an averages league. That's kind of been my take with Igor Shesterkin.
Huh. Yeah. I'm the flip side of that. I think he's going to be really great with his rates, but the Rangers don't seem to be ready to start him like say 2/3 of the time. Although we haven't really seen, because like he came in late in the season, he was sharing time with Georgiev, and then like he was in that car accident, I think it was, with Buchnevich. But and like in his career, he's never played more than 37 games in a season. So like, can he be a volume starter? I don't know. But he's a guy I'm confident. Like I've seen enough from him to believe that he can shut down NHL competition.
Interesting.
But not Sam.
My problem with him is I've seen him play 12 games.
Yeah. That's enough for Brian. By the way, okay, so I have a question for you guys about the Rangers, if it's okay.
Okay.
Also, I'm a little goalie out, I'll be honest. We just did like a 2+ hour episode about goalies a couple of days ago.
Fine.
The Rangers, the big question for me. So one of them that I think has been answered, I think we already knew, is like Lafreniere is coming in, and it seems like he's going to be a third liner at least to start the year. Like if you look at the lines they've been rolling, like Panarin and Zibanejad have both been out, and they've had placeholders in there, but it's like clearly going to be Strome, Panarin, Kakko. So Kakko's like interesting, I think, and then Buchnevich, Zibanejad, and Kreider, which is the line they always go with. So I think to me, like Kakko's interesting. And like Kakko versus Lafreniere, I think becomes an interesting thing, because in drafts, I've been seeing Lafreniere drafted so much higher. And like, obviously in a dynasty league, we're not having this conversation, but like for next season, I feel like Kakko is like sometimes going undrafted or falling to the very end, and Lafreniere is going middle draft. And I probably would take Kakko if he's going to be playing with Panarin.
So my take on this on our episode about the Rangers was that I don't trust David Quinn at all to keep things steady. I mean, they shifted lines all the time. And so I think that if there's one person that I don't trust him with youth at all. I'm not trusting Lafreniere. I'm not trusting Kakko. I'm not trusting anybody on the Rangers. Like, just because I don't know where they're going to end up. I mean, Kakko played third line sometimes. He played first line sometimes. He was everywhere. And I think they're going to do it's tougher to do with Lafreniere just because of who's above him, right? He'd have to supplant either Kreider, or he'd have to supplant Panarin. And sure, he could supplant Kakko on that right wing, but it seems they want to keep him on the left wing for now, and have a really strong left wing, and then have a right wing that resembles the Calgary Flames. That's actually too harsh. They have good right wingers, but that's my own team, so I guess I'm harsher on them. But I don't know. I think for me, Kakko isn't that interesting. It was kind of interesting looking at, I think it was Jay Fresh on Twitter, pointed out just how bad Kakko was last year. It was a like horrifically bad season from underlying statistics perspective. And I don't really see how he corrects that this year, because his situation to me hasn't changed. I don't think Kakko's like situation has changed. He started second line last season, and we saw him flip everywhere. So to me, he's interesting. There could be something there. I don't expect him to necessarily keep it.
I think everything you're saying is smart. Like, I think the big thing that's changed is he's just a year older. He has a year of NHL experience. Maybe he's grown, practice, eating more, whatever you do. He's going to turn 20 like midway through this season. So that'll be something. So will Lafreniere, by the way. Lafreniere and Kakko were born in the same year. Oh no, Lafreniere's born in October though. So I guess he won't become 20 until next season, but they're close. But all that to say, I just think that in terms of like their ADPs, right? It's just like Lafreniere, I think, is going like super high, and Kakko is like totally forgotten. And it's just interesting to me, since I feel like at the least, like I think that they're close in terms of like looking at what they're
between the two of them. I would take Kakko.
Also,
I think shout out to Jay Fresh Hockey on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you should be following him. He's been doing really amazing work, and he's like I feel like he only came onto the scene like a year ago. And
I remember following him. I remember following him when he had like under 200 followers, and I sent to this brand. I was like, this guy's kind of interesting, and he was like, meh. And now he's like the biggest fan of Jay Fresh ever.
I like
signed up for his
Patreon. He had those player cards early on that were just like amalgamations of, the analytics of the world put into one like consumable piece of information. And he's kind of like ridden with that, and then wrote really eloquent articles to go with it.
Yeah. So I do want to say one thing going back to this. The reason I think that Lafreniere is going higher is because he's slated to be on the top power play. And I think people are banking on the top power play for the Rangers, which I think is a little over-indexed to begin with. I think that top power play from last season was just a little too insane, especially when you consider Tony DeAngelo's shooting percentage. So I think that's why. But again, I think he could easily lose it to Pavel Buchnevich, and Buchnevich goes up to that top power play, and Lafreniere loses that right wing slot. So I don't know. It's also David Quinn, like I said, and he changes everything. I don't trust him with rookies. I mean, his development so far has been absolutely terrible, I would say, for rookies. And I feel like he's in the hot seat, honestly.
I mean, but this could be a huge year. Like, so yeah, if the Rangers blow it this year and don't do as well as we're expecting, then yeah, that would be a problem. Like the thing with Lafreniere on the top power plays, was he bumping? I guess Ryan Strome, because like last year, like you said, they were so good. So it's like Kreider, Panarin, Strome, Zibanejad, D'Angelo. Why Mesta? That same thing. I guess we've been having this conversation about Fox and D'Angelo, and some people are hoping Fox will take over on the top power play. But the response has always been, well, they were good last year. Like, why would they mess with that? Yeah.
Did Strome play mostly on the top power play, or was it Buchnevich? I can't remember. I want to say Buchnevich played more on that. No, I think I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it was Strome. Yeah, Strome up on the top power play. So I think right now they have him supplanting Ryan Strome. I don't know if that sticks. It makes sense, like you said, but at the same time, do you want two rookies, essentially rookies, on your second power play unit? And you have Adam Fox down there too. It'd be Adam Fox, Lafreniere, and Capo Caco. That's a young second power play unit.
Adam Fox can handle anything. We love Adam
Fox is
you give him 4 rookies to play on the second unit with, and I think he'll be okay. But and also like Ryan Strome isn't that like I agree. He's sort of like ripe for the picking off of that top unit. But I don't know who else. Like I was actually talking to Elon in our joint draft about Chris Kreider. And like, is he someone who could move? Like, what if they did move Strome and Kreider to the second unit to make room for Kakko and Lafreniere? And then they have like 2 sort of balanced units and one isn't too rookie heavy. There's so many moving parts in New York this year. They're really hard time for me to understand, especially because you still have guys like Buchnevich and Hedl in the picture who have themselves been moving around a lot and not quite developed in a linear way. So I just find there's so many unknown variables here. New York has kind of just thrown my hands traded again, like for the 9th time, according to like hockey's future boards.
Like the thing is, on one hand, like you say, like there's so much up in the air. On the other hand, like last year they stuck with pretty much the same lines, you know, in terms of like Zibanejad, Kreider, and Buchnevich, and then Panarin, Strome, and Victor Fast. Like they pretty much stuck with it last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it could be like a lot of moving parts, or it could be like we know it right now exactly what it's going to be. And Lafreniere is the left wing on the third line, and he's not on the top power play, and that's just how it is. But obviously, it depends what he can do with his first bit of NHL experience.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I think Kakko definitely becomes way more interesting, though, being on that line with Strome and Panarin for sure. I'm going to let Brandon, you can walk us into your very boring scoring wingerless New York Islanders and talk us
there's
through
nothing
what
to
are the
talk
changes
about
there.
on the Islanders. Like the lines are
there isn't really
the same as last year. Like nothing changed.
I'm good to move on.
There's
we can skip.
Honestly, here's the one thing that's changed.
Pulock is good too.
Yeah,
I like
Pulock.
that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Devon Taves got a lot of top power play time last year, and he's gone. So Pulock could take that spot. If Noah Dobson isn't ready, then maybe Pulock gets an uptick in power play time, and
he definitely should.
Guy.
And even if Pulock doesn't get that uptick, he's still like a super valuable. Like he's like a Darnell Nurse type. You can just count on him for a solid floor and probably more points than Nurse. But like the peripherals are there and they'll come. And Nurse doesn't have top power play upside at the moment, and Pulock does. So I'm into him. But nothing else about the Islanders screams to me like anything is changing from last year. Just like
other than Barzal still not being signed, which is interesting.
But somehow Matt Martin getting a 4-year deal.
Of course, gotta get your bangos, man.
The Lou way, man. The Lou way. Okay, so we can skip the Isles for now, and let's move over to the Philadelphia Flyers, which, if you guys haven't heard, there was a very hot take in our Canadian or North Division preview.
How are you repeating this?
Where I said
literally
that
gonna have your house burned down.
Elias Pettersson is essentially Travis Konechny last year. Last year, they were essentially the same player from a fantasy perspective. But one is going top 20, the other one is going, 90s or whatever it is. And surprisingly, people didn't burn my house down. People kind of agreed with me.
Podcast as an entity.
But anyway, so now we go on to the Konechny team. It was actually really funny. We did a listener league. Someone joined and made their team name. What was it? It was Konechny
son of Elias or something like that.
Oh yeah, Konechny son of Elias or something like that. It was pretty good, actually. I'll give him that. So anyways, the line pairings for the Flyers practice today were actually a little bit different. Kind of interesting. So we have Lindblom, Couturier, and Konechny, or Elias Pettersson, however he decides to go by. And then we have on the other one, Giroux, Hayes, and Farabee. And then JVR, Nolan Patrick, and Voracek. That's a deep 3-line system. A little scary because I feel like they can all kind of play big minutes. And then interestingly, we have Provorov and Ghost on the top pairing. I didn't expect Ghost to get top pairing minutes, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put him somewhere. And...
a lot of Ghost questions now. Oh, put him on the top power play or top line. No one will see him.
Well, at least Provorov is there to like back him up, I guess.
Do something. Yeah. Exactly. Provorov can hold them all up. I
think it's interesting. So first of all, cool to see Nolan Patrick and Oscar Lindblom back. Like both of them have dealt with significant health issues. Lindblom, I like last year, actually, before he had to go for his cancer treatment, he was playing on a line with Couturier and Konechny, and they were doing really well together.
He was good.
So I don't see why he can't maybe that's a great line. Those are probably two of the best players on the team in Couturier and Konechny, I guess, along with Giroux in terms of the type of offensive player you want to be with. Brian, obviously, we'll say Voracek also, but that's a great spot to be. So Lindblom is someone who just wasn't even drafted in the league that I just finished right now. That was a pretty deep draft. So I've got him on my watch list ready as for my first injury or one of my first ad drops. I'm excited about him. Yeah, that's the guy that really jumps out to me. The Konechny Pettersson thing is pretty wild, and I think I'd have to really wrap my head around that. I think there's a big difference.
I need to know more.
Would you like me to actually read off the numbers of?
If you just strictly look at stats.
Just looking at just strictly stats from last season is essentially what I was saying. You have Pettersson at an 80-point pace, Konechny 76, Pettersson on a 195 shot pace, Konechny 175. You got Pettersson got 23 power play points. Konechny got 23 power play points.
But what do you think for this year?
Who is who? That? No, I think it's just more of my point was more that we're taking Pettersson at, top 15 ADP value when there's people out there that can essentially produce the same. I don't believe Pettersson necessarily gives you that top 15 value yet. I think he's still about a year's out from
Travis Konechny also had an insane season, right?
He did, absolutely.
6-point pace, 17% shooting percentage. I'm sure Brian would dig up more reasons why it was unsustainable. And I think he's really great. Maybe he's even the best player on the team. But also, I was kind of concerning in the playoffs for a stretch. Konechny wasn't even on the top power play.
I know. Fun fact.
Yeah, no Pettersson also in the playoffs.
Pettersson also shot at 17%, in case you were wondering.
Yeah, Konechny's shooting percentage isn't necessarily so unsustainable. And his production looked legit last year, which is one thing we really liked about Konechny, right off the top. So I do think that Pettersson is worth more, but I do agree that Pettersson is getting this bump. Whenever a player's coming up, it reminds me a lot of Patrick Laine in his second and third year. Not that anyone could or should have been wrong about him, but there's just that extra bump when you get a player for the first time, when their value has jumped and you think it's just going to jump again in a linear way, and it's not. Then people like to reach and have the next hot, the new hotness. And I think this year Pettersson probably encapsulates that better than most others. I'd say Svechnikov and maybe Gensel are the other candidates of people oh yeah, I want to get in on the ground floor of this guy just to say I knew, when everybody knows his name instead of just 70% of people know his name.
I like all of those guys. Also, Pettersson's not getting bumped off the top power play in the playoffs, so that's a big difference between him and Konechny.
Definitely not.
I like Konechny. I think he could. I think he could. Honestly, I don't know if this is a hot take. I think he could be a 75-point player again.
I agree. Honestly, I agree too. As long as he doesn't lose that top power play.
I will repeat, but yeah,
it is. But I don't think it's out of the question that he could be, I think, a 75-point guy, given, and he did that last season. I don't know if this is necessarily a positive, actually, but he did do that with only about 16 and a half ish, or almost 17 minutes a game. So, not exactly a great thing, but just saying there's room for improvement there.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to say it, it's because his career, he shot 13% the 2 years before and 17% last year, but that's only because he got that bump in shooting percentage because he got to take more shots and score more goals on the power play, where you'd expect him to be able to improve his shooting percentage. So that power play shooting percentage lifted the 5-on-5 shooting percentage, and I don't think it's terribly unsustainable. He shot over 20% on the power play. I'm not sure that's sustainable because we haven't seen him in that role long enough, but I'm also not writing it off completely.
Yeah, agreed. Farabee is a little bit interesting to me on a line with Giroux and Hayes. I don't know why. I mean, he doesn't have that second power play, but Farabee is someone to me that I would watch, I guess. I could also see him swap in with Konechny if it's not working, move Farabee up with Couturier and Lindblom and see what happens there.
It does seem like they're trying to run two distinct lines this time around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about Giroux not playing with Couturier. The one thing I do know I like is I don't want Giroux centering if I have Giroux on my roster.
Giroux on the wing, please.
Last time he centered was bad. Then he moved to the wing, and that was the last time he got a point per game season. It's like you want him on the wing.
Yeah,
And he doesn't need to center. Like Philadelphia is deep enough.
There's no need.
With Patrick healthy, Couturier, Hayes, Patrick, boom, you don't need him there. Like there's just so much to watch too. Like you mentioned Farabee. Like I want to know what happens with Lindblom, with Van Riemsdyk, and I think Voracek, by the way, is a good, like, I can't call him a sleeper because he's been around too long, but he seems to be getting slept on in drafts. People are just forgetting about him. And Kevin Hayes too. Like either guys in this top 9 in Philly are proven or have this really great, interesting upside. So they'll be a fun team to watch.
So I will say one bad news about Konechny right now. The bad is right now the first power play unit on Daily Faceoff. I don't know if it's here. I'm trying to see if it's in. I don't know if it's been tweeted. No. The first power play unit right now is being shown as JVR, Couturier, Voracek, and then Giroux and Provorov.
To be fair,
points. So no,
I don't know if
that's true though. If there's no tweet, it's not guaranteed.
It's like nothing. It's just like they have to put something. Like Brock, who does Daily Faceoff, who's great. He always wants to have something there. He's not just going to put X's on the player's name, so he might just be guessing. Like if there's no tweet, to verify
I hope so.
I definitely know that he's not like an insider that's getting like inside info, like, passed to him from the Philadelphia like media or whatever. But
I would expect Konechny over JVR.
Those sound like playoff lines, right? Like that.
Yeah,
that was Konechny off top power play playoff
I think
lines.
That is true. I think it sounds like the power. Like
Can I say
one thing that I really do like is Provorov top power play. It's something that we did see a bit of that last season. We saw it in the playoffs. I want to see that continue, and then I think his value currently that we've been seeing in drafts this season could be undervalued. In fact, I think that if you didn't draft him, I assume most people listening to this now have done their drafts. If you didn't draft him, I would be paying attention to see what Philly looks like for the first couple of weeks and potentially look for a trade, even if it's a trade like down from wherever you drafted your last defenseman. If you can find a way to swap somebody that isn't quite as hot for a Provorov who could be much better than his draft position in a lot of leagues.
I'm just gonna poo-poo a bunch of things here, just to be like the guy with the cold water bucket or whatever. Like Provorov, I feel like could get challenged by Eric Gustafsson and get bumped from the top power play. So we haven't seen.
Yeah,
I'm like down on Giroux playing with Hayes and Farabee. I'm down on Voracek playing with JVR, Nolan Patrick. Like I kind of feel like I disagree with what Brian said about Voracek being a sleeper, especially based on these lines. I kind of like this top line of Couturier, Konechny, and Lindblom. And
I love that top
everyone
line.
else kind of like scares me. Like I would be afraid to draft Giroux and I'd be afraid to draft Voracek unless it was super late because of like these line mates that they have right now.
I will get with like the vibe of what you're saying, that this is like a volatile team. Like you don't want to get too invested in any of them. But JVR, Nolan Patrick, and Jacob Voracek sounds like a pretty fun line to me.
I mean, that's because you're living back in the time when JVR was fantasy relevant.
And Voracek. And Nolan Patrick's a former top.
JVR is going to get a hat trick and everybody's going to lose their minds at some point in the season.
Of course. I will say the fact that we like the lines is concerning for me because they probably like them too, and it probably means less minutes overall. I mean, last season we saw Giroux's minutes fall from 21.5 to 19. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something similar this year with like a 2 top line type thing, and then that JVR line gets, some decent-ish minutes, maybe 16 or whatever, and then, the other people are left with the scraps. But that's the one thing that's a little concerning to me looking at this is I looked through these lines and immediately said, wow, these are good, which I think means net negative for minutes for these top guys. So that's the one thing I would at least call out to agree with you there, Elon, is like, I think it's a net negative for everyone that I like these lines so much and that the Flyers are so deep in this way. Okay, so let's move on to the last team here, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not too much to talk about. Very much the same team from last season, but there is one player that is very important. So right now, the
Kevin Rodriguez
even strength lines. No.
What?
Out of your mind. Gensel, Crosby, Rodriguez, top line. That's why Brandon said Rodriguez. Second line is Zucker, Malkin, and Rust. I almost said Zalkin. Zucker, Malkin, and Rust. But the interesting bit is that you heard the Rust name. And now when you look at the power play, it's Letang, Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, and Rust on that top power play.
There we go.
Yay.
I think Rust value skyrockets, personally.
Yeah.
Why are you saying yay? Did you draft Rust, Brian?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. And in two leagues. And like, I was getting nervous when Gamby was reading the lines. I was like, oh no. Like, is there new info since I last looked? So
everyone.
That was
We've
my
been
audible
hyping Rust up
relief
for so long.
Yeah, so
Rust
I can't say I like have a ton of faith he's entrenched here. Like I could definitely see Zucker stepping up, but Zucker's a shooter, like a big shooter, and like you don't need that necessarily on your top unit when you already have Gensel and Malkin and Crosby there. So I hope Russ stays there all season. That would be exciting. And he's a guy like Fiala, who when he first went on a run last year, I was like, can he really? And then like as the sample grew and the data piled, it's like, oh yeah, I think he can. Like this is gonna stay. So I'm hopeful. Like I think he's at least a 60-point player being in the situation he's in. I think there's upside for even more beyond that. And I like him more than Evan Rodriguez this year.
I like him a lot more than Evan Rodriguez.
What a hot
this
take.
year. What a hot take. But I think Rust skyrockets kind of up my board now. I was hesitant in our listener leagues to really reach for Rust. But I think now seeing this
Don't tell everybody. We still have more going on this weekend. They're all going to take him now.
We live stream them anyways, and we get sniped constantly because some people say they don't watch the live stream, but they do. So it doesn't matter anyways. Anyways, okay. Well, I mean, actually, last thing on Pittsburgh before we kind of finish this off, because this is the last team. What do you guys think about Tristan Jarry? I know you're a little bit jaded on goalies, but real quick, what are you thinking about Tristan Jarry?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to comment because I know we were all joking around about Evan Rodriguez. So just to be clear, like Kasperi Kapanen is dealing with immigration issues, and the plan is that he's going to take that spot with Gensel and Crosby. And I'm not saying I think this is going to happen, but it's also possible he gets a look on that top power play, right? Like that is another piece that could be someone. Like Rust could be holding a spot. We don't know. So
Shoot me if that happens.
Just saying, he's not nobody. Tristan Jarry, like. I don't know. Last year he had like a stretch where he was amazing, and then he had a stretch at the end where he like wasn't that great, and it averages out to still like a pretty good season. And he's the starter on a good team, so he's someone that I would be into like at the appropriate time. Like I wouldn't reach for Tristan Jarry. Like he's a starting goalie on the Penguins. Like he's someone I want, and he's shown that he has the capability to be good. So I don't know, like what I'm really interested to know. Do you guys like hate him or do you like him? I just feel like he's so like just right there.
I don't feel him. I don't know.
I forget he exists. He always goes in the draft, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's a starter now. Like I don't know. He's just like this goalie that I feel like I haven't paid attention to at all this season, and he's just so he's so middle of the pack, under the radar that.
The funny thing is, every time I think about Tristan Jarry, I'm like, what do I know about Tristan Jarry? The last time he saw like a good amount of starts, consistent starting goalie level starts, he lost the net. Who do you lose it to? Oh, it was Casey DeSmith, right? It's like, oh, wait, here we are again. Like, what's actually going to happen here? Do we actually know he's going to be like at least a 60% starter, or are they going to limit his minutes because once he starts taking on too much, he starts to fall apart? I don't know. I mean, I have some concerns there. I think Pittsburgh is a good team, and he's going to be getting wins. And like, I don't know. I don't think there's enough teams in that division that aren't crazy offensive that maybe it'll be fine. But I don't think I'm going to wind up drafting him in fact, I don't have a single share of him, and I probably never will get one, even in the ones coming up this weekend. But
because we forget he exists.
Yeah. And plus, like, I feel like he's in that middle level of goalies that I'm just never going to draft. Like I'm either getting like a top 2 or 3 goalie, or I'm just waiting until the end.
Like our strategy with goalies is that we always preach is make your tiers and then wait until there's only like 1 or 2 guys left in your tier and then pounce. And the whole idea is just think that everyone in the tier you consider equal. So we have Jarry, I believe, in our tier 3, along with guys like Koskinen and Samsonov because Brian wanted to put him there. So it's like what we have like 8 guys in this tier. So Talbot is there, so it's like if they all are like could be good, could maybe not be good, like who knows. And so, but they're all starters. So like once I get to the end of that tier, I'll take Jari if he's the one who's remaining. But I'm not reaching for him because I feel like there's just as good a chance of him being great as him not being as great. And like Koskinen and Talbot, I feel the exact same way about.
So where'd you put Bobrovsky?
Also tier 3. Yeah.
Okay. I can live with that.
One thing
I can live with that.
I want to also mention about the Penguins, and this is not something I think will matter this season necessarily, but I feel like John Marino is potentially being groomed for power play 1.
Thank you. Okay, everyone gets so mad at me. This is like
who gets mad at you?
Everyone, like, I feel like every question we get on our Discord, people are like, "What? Like, should I take this guy or Chris Letang?" And everyone's like, "Oh, Letang for sure. Letang's the best. What are you crazy?" And it's like,
I like Letang a lot this season.
I have in the back of my mind, like, there were times. That's fair. Like, Letang is great, but there were times in the past where Justin Schultz would bump him from the top power play for stretches. There's also the injury concern with Letang.
Yeah.
And also, like, I think John Marino's better than Justin Schultz. Like, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have to give John Marino a shot and we'll see. And like, I just feel like there might be a time in the season when we're going on Keeping Karlsson and you're going on Fantasy Hockey Podcast and being like, oh, check out this breaking news. John Marino just got a chance on the top power play and he scored a goal. And like, maybe this is a new thing. So like, I actually
needs to start
Marino in a
shooting
couple
more.
leagues.
I don't necessarily see him being able to even replace anything that Schultz even was doing on top power play if he's not willing to shoot the puck. But
well, he was just a rookie though, so like maybe he could learn.
I'm very much in the John Marino camp. I think Gamby was ahead of me on this, but I don't think this is necessarily a this season thing. I do agree with you, especially in the event of Letang injury. It has to be John Marino getting the first look power play 1. He's power play 2 right now.
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, the other option, like Mike,
come on,
they have Mike Matheson.
Dumoulin? Power play 1 Dumoulin? What's going to happen?
No, I think it would be Matheson is the next one they would try. But
yeah.
Oh boy.
And
That's
like,
sad.
they are going to try some funny stuff. Like, as Ivan said, like
Marino's
they always
currently running power play 2 with no other defenseman on there. So
yeah. So we'll see.
In practice lines, I mean, who knows? But that would make sense to me.
Yeah. If I'm a Letang owner, like it sucks that you don't only have to worry about injuries, you have to worry about him being supplanted at some point by some rando. I mean, not that Marino or Matheson are necessarily randos, but like Justin Schultz has been, and like didn't like even Marcus Pettersson, like some like
Pettersson can also do it.
Have gotten turns over Chris Letang in the past, and we can't rule it out from happening again. Like there's just 2 possibilities for heartbreak when you draft Letang, and both are fairly likely. So I generally try and stay away with them unless I'm getting really good value.
Yeah. Once he's like falling to like the lower 10 defensemen, like, bottom of the top 10, that's when you start like being like, okay, now I have to take him.
For sure.
Guys,
Which is kind of when we've taken him. This was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and doing this with us. And if you don't know already or somehow missed it at the beginning, the other half of the NHL sponsored divisions are over on the Keeping Karlsson side. So definitely go over there and listen to those. But otherwise, that's the show. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to this episode every single season. I'm glad we were able to do it again, even in these crazy times. Thank you, Zoom, even though you don't pay us, but I guess thanks.
Literally nothing changes for us to make this episode too. We're pandemic or no pandemic. We're still video conferencing. And
all the same.
Well, it's like a thanks to my work, Finance It, for giving me a pro Zoom account so that I could stream for free to our YouTube channel.
You've made it when you have a pro Zoom account. I don't even know what that looks like. I mean, that's a weird world that I don't know.
Definitely doesn't stop you at 40 minutes.
Oh no,
you want to hear for 3 hours.
Oh yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We will catch you next time.
Bye. Thanks again.
Boom.
Okay.
That went well, guys. That was nuts. That went a lot.
I had a great time, and I
had a great time.
I am gonna walk out into like a bad situation. Okay,
you're gonna walk in and be all happy and like.
It's like I thought you were gonna be done at 10.
What's your first line?
I didn't give my wife any. She knew that I was like, we're gonna start at 8. I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks everyone for joining in the chat. By the way,
that was
Danny are still here. GI,
a lot of good conversation in there.
Yeah. All right. See you, everybody.
Later, guys.
Bye, guys. It was great. Thanks a lot.
I'll send you the
fun
video stuff.
Thanks, man.
Good.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
See ya.